梁歌制作，鲁迅名篇，鲁迅1881-1936，字育才，原名周树人，浙江绍兴人。中国现代伟大的文学家、思想家、革命家。亦从百草园到三味书屋。
Produced by Liang Gu, Lu Sun's famous chapters. Lu Sun, 1881-1936, whose courtesy name was Henkai, was originally named Zhou Shuren, and was a native of Shaoxing, Zhejiang. A great modern Chinese writer, thinker, and revolutionary. 1. From Baichao Garden to Sanwei Bookstore.
我家的后面有一个很大的园，相传叫做百草园。现在是早已并屋子一起卖给朱文公的子孙了，连那最末次的相见也已经隔了7、8年，其中似乎确凿只有一些野草。
There is a large garden behind my house, which is said to be called Baichao Garden. Now it has been sold together with the house to Zhu Wengong's descendants. Even the last meeting has been separated by 7 or 8 years. It seems that there are only some weeds in it.
但那时却是我的乐园。不必说碧绿的菜畦、光滑的石井栏、高大的皂荚树、紫红的桑葚，也不必说明缠在树叶里长吟、肥胖的黄蜂伏在菜花上，清洁的叫天子、云雀忽然从草间直窜。
But it was my paradise then. But it was my paradise then. Needless to say, there are green vegetable beds, smooth stone well railings, tall acacia trees, and purple mulberries, not to mention chirping. Cicadas sing in the leaves, fat wasps lie on the cauliflowers, and they call the emperor, skylark, suddenly. Straight from the grass.
向云霄里去了，但是周围的短短的泥墙根一带就有无限趣味。幽灵在这里低唱，蟋蟀们在这里弹琴。翻开断砖来，有时会遇见蜈蚣，还有斑毛，倘若用手指按住它的脊梁，便会拍的一声。
Gone into the sky. The surrounding short mud walls alone are infinitely interesting. The oil flies sing here, and the crickets play the piano here. Gone into the sky. The surrounding short mud walls alone are infinitely interesting. The oil flies sing here, and the crickets play the piano here. When turning over broken bricks, you will sometimes encounter centipedes. There are also cantharides. If you press it with your fingers, its backbone will snap.
从后窍喷出一阵烟雾，何首乌藤和木莲藤缠络着，木莲有莲房一般的果实，何首乌有臃肿的根。有人说，何首乌根是有像人形的，吃了便可，已成仙。我于是常常把它起来。
A burst of smoke erupts from the posterior orifice. Polygonum multiflorum vine and magnolia vine are intertwined. Magnolia has a lotus-like fruit, and Polygonum multiflorum has swollen roots. Some people say that Polygonum multiflorum root has the shape of a human being. If you eat it, you can become an immortal. So I often pull it up.
牵连不断地拔起来，也曾因此弄坏了泥墙，却从来没有见过有一块根像人样。如果不怕刺，还可以摘到覆盆子，像小珊瑚珠攒成的小球，又酸又甜，色味都比桑葚要好得远。
The roots were pulled out constantly, and the mud walls were damaged, but I never saw a single root that looked like a human being. If you are not afraid of thorns, you can also pick raspberries, which are like small balls made of small coral beads. They are sour and sweet, and the color and taste are far better than mulberries.
长的草里是不去的，因为相传这园里有一条很大的赤练蛇。常妈妈曾经讲给我一个故事听，先前有一个读书人住在古庙里用功，晚间在院子里纳凉的时候，
You can't go into the long grass because it is said that there is a big red snake in the garden. My eldest mother once told me a story. Previously, there was a scholar who lived in an ancient temple and studied in the courtyard. At night, he was enjoying the cool air in the courtyard.
突然听到有人在叫他，答应着四面看时，却见一个美女的脸露在墙头上，向他一笑，隐去了。他很高兴，但竟给那走来夜谈的老和尚识破了机关，说他脸上有些妖气，一定遇见美女蛇了。
Suddenly he heard someone calling him. He agreed, and when he looked around, he saw a beautiful woman's face exposed on the wall. She smiled at him and then disappeared. He was very happy, but the old monk who came to talk at night discovered the trap. He said that there was something evil about his face. He must have met a beautiful snake.
这是人首蛇身的怪物，能唤人名，倘一答应，夜间便要来吃这人的肉的。他自然吓得要死，而那老和尚却到无房给他一个小盒子，说只要放在枕边，便可高枕而卧。他虽然照样办。
This is a monster with the head of a human and the body of a snake. It can call people by name. If they agree, they will come to eat the person's flesh at night. He was naturally frightened to death, but the old monk said it was okay and gave him a small box, saying that as long as he put it next to his pillow, he could sleep peacefully. He did it anyway.
却总是睡不着，当然睡不着的。到半夜，果然来了，沙沙沙，门外像是风雨声。他正抖作一团时，却听得豁的一声，一道金光从枕边飞出，外面便什么声音也没有了，那金光也就飞回来。
But I can't sleep, of course I can't. In the middle of the night, it really came, rustle. There was the sound of wind and rain outside the door. While he was shaking, he heard a crack, and a golden light flew out from the pillow. There was no sound outside, and the golden light flew back.
脸在盒子里。后来呢？后来，老和尚说这是飞蜈蚣，它能吸蛇的脑髓，美女蛇就被它治死了。节末的教训是，所以倘有陌生的声音叫你的名字，你万不可答应他。
Trapped in a box. What happened next? Later, the old monk said that this was a flying centipede, which could suck the brains of snakes, and the beautiful snake was killed by it. The lesson at the end is, so if a strange voice calls your name, you must not answer it.
这故事很使我觉得做人之险，夏夜乘凉，往往有些担心，不敢去看墙上，而且极想得到一盒老和尚那样的飞蜈蚣。走到百草园的草丛旁边时，也常常这样想，但直到现在。
This story makes me feel the dangers of being a human being. I am often a little worried when I enjoy the coolness on a summer night and dare not look at the wall. This story makes me feel the dangers of being a human being. I am often a little worried when I enjoy the coolness on a summer night and dare not look at the wall. Moreover, I desperately want to get a box of flying centipedes like the old monk. I often think this way when I walk to the grass in the herb garden. But, until now.
总还没有得到，但也没有遇见过赤练蛇和美女蛇。叫我名字的陌生声音自然是常有的，然而都不是美女蛇。冬天的百草园比较的无味，雪一下可就两样了。拍雪人。
I haven't gotten it yet, but I haven't met the red snake and the beautiful snake either. Strange voices calling my name are naturally common, but they are not beautiful snakes. The Baichao garden in winter is relatively tasteless. When it snows, it becomes completely different. Take a picture of the snowman.
将自己的全形印在雪上和速雪罗汉需要人们鉴赏，这是荒原，人迹罕至，所以不相宜，只好来捕鸟。薄薄的雪是不行的，总需积雪盖了地面1-2天，鸟雀们久已无处觅食的时候才好。
People need to appreciate it by printing their full shape on the snow, and shaping the snow hut. This is a deserted park and inaccessible, so it is not suitable, so we have to come to catch birds. Thin snow is not enough, it must be covered with snow for a day or two, and the birds have nowhere to feed.
扫开一块雪，露出地面，用一支短棒支起一面大的竹筛来，下面撒些鼻骨，棒上系一条长绳，人远远地牵着，看鸟雀下来啄食，走到竹筛底下的时候，将绳子一拉，便罩住了。
Sweep away a piece of snow to expose the ground. Use a short stick to prop up a large bamboo sieve. Scatter some grains underneath. Tie a long rope to the stick, and hold it from a distance to watch the birds come to peck at it. When I walked under the bamboo sieve, I pulled the rope and covered it.
但所得的是麻雀居多，也有白颊的张飞鸟，性子很躁，养不过夜的。这是闰土的父亲所传授的方法，我却不大能用。明明见他们进去了，拉了绳，跑去一看，却什么都没有，费了半天力。
But what we got were mostly sparrows, and there were also white-cheeked, zhang-fei birds, which were very irritable and couldn't be raised at night. This is the method taught by Runta's father, but I am not very good at using it. I obviously saw them entering, so I pulled the rope and ran to take a look, but there was nothing there. It took me a long time.
捉住的不过3-4只，闰土的父亲是小半天便能捕获几10只，装在插袋里叫着撞着的。我曾经问他得失的缘由，他只静静地笑，道：“你太性急，来不及等他走到中间去。”
Only 3 or 4 were caught. Runta's father was able to catch dozens of them at a young age, put them in fork bags, scream and hit them. I once asked him the reasons for gains and losses, and he just laughed quietly and said, "You are too impatient and don't have time to wait for it to come to the middle."
我不知道为什么家里的人要将我送进叔塾里去了，而且还是全城中称为最严厉的叔塾。也许是因为把何首乌毁了泥墙坝，也许是因为将砖头抛到建壁的梁架去了。罢。
I don't know why my family sent me to a private school, which is also known as the most severe school in the city. Maybe it was because the mud wall was destroyed by pulling out Polygonum multiflorum, or maybe it was because the bricks were thrown to the Liang family next door.
也许是因为站在石井栏上跳下来罢，都无从知道。总而言之，我将不能常到百草园了。我的蟋蟀们，我的覆盆子们和木莲们。出门向东，不上半里，走过一道石桥。
Maybe it was because he jumped down from the stone well railing. I don't know. All in all, I won't be able to go to Baichao Garden often. Ade, my crickets. Maybe it was because he jumped down from the stone well railing. I don't know. All in all, I won't be able to go to Baichao Garden often. Ade, my crickets. Ade, my raspberries and magnolias. Going out to the east, within half a mile, you cross a stone bridge.
便是我的先生的家了。从一扇黑油的竹门进去，第3间是书房，中间挂着一块匾道，3位书屋，匾下面是一幅画，画着一只很肥大的梅花鹿伏在古树下，没有孔子牌位。
This is my husband's home. Enter through a black bamboo door, and the third room is the study. There is a plaque hanging in the middle saying, Sanway Bookstore. Below it is a painting, with a very fat Sika deer lying under the old tree. There is no Confucius tablet.
我们便对着那匾和路行礼。第一次算是拜孔子，第二次算是拜先生。第二次行礼时，先生便和蔼地在一旁搭理。他是一个高而瘦的老人，须发都花，白了，还戴着大眼镜。我对他很恭敬。
We saluted the bien and the deer. The first time was considered as worshipping Confucius, and the second time was considered as worshipping Mr. When he saluted for the second time, the gentleman responded kindly to the side. He is a tall, thin old man with grizzled beard and hair, and he wears big glasses. I respect him very much.
因为我早听到他是本城中极方正、质朴、博学的人。不知从那里听来的，东方朔也很渊博。他认识一种虫，名曰怪哉，冤气所化，用酒一浇就消逝了。我很想详细的知道这故事。
Because I have heard long ago that he is a very upright, simple, and knowledgeable person in this city. I don't know where I heard it from, but Dongfang Shuo is also very knowledgeable. He knows a kind of insect called guizai. I would like to know this story in detail.
但阿长是不知道的，因为他毕竟不渊博。现在得到机会了，可以问先生。先生，怪哉这虫是怎么一回事？我上了生疏，将要退下来的时候，赶忙问。不知道。他似乎很不高兴，脸上还有怒色了。
But Ah Chang doesn't know, because she is not knowledgeable after all. Now that I have the opportunity, I can ask Mr. Sir, what's going on with this weird bug? I asked quickly when I was about to step down after taking the exam. I don't know. He seemed very unhappy, with an angry look on his face.
我才知道做学生是不应该问这些事的，只要读书，因为他是渊博的宿儒，绝不。至于不知道，所谓不知道者，乃是不愿意说。年纪比我大的人往往如此，我遇见过好几回了。
Only then did I realize that students should not ask these things. As long as they are studying, they are profound scholars. As for those who don't know are those who don't want to talk. This is often the case with people who are older than me. I have met them several times.
我就只读书，正午习字，晚上对课。先生最初这几天对我很严厉，后来却好起来了。不过给我读的书渐渐加多，对课也渐渐地加上字去，从3言到5言，终于到7言。
I just read, practice calligraphy at noon, and review classes in the evening. My husband was very strict with me in the first few days, but then he got better and recovered. However, he gradually read more books to me, and gradually added more words to his lectures, from 3 words to 5 words, and finally to 7 words.
3味书屋后面也有一个园，虽然小，但在那里也可以爬上花坛去折腊梅花，在地上或桂花树上寻蝉蜕。最好的工作是捉了苍蝇喂蚂蚁，静悄悄的没有声音。然而
There is also a garden behind Sanway Bookstore. Although it is small, you can climb up the flower bed there to pick off winter-sweet flowers and look for cicadas to shed on the ground or on the sweet-scented osmanthus tree. There is also a garden behind Sanway Bookstore. Although it is small, you can climb up the flower bed there to pick off winter-sweet flowers and look for cicadas to shed on the ground or on the sweet-scented osmanthus tree.
同窗们到园里的太多太久，可就不行了。先生在书房里便大叫起来，人都到那里去了。 人们便一个一个陆续走回去，一同回去也不行的。它有一条戒尺，但是不长，用也有罚跪的规矩。
Too many classmates had been in the garden for too long, and it was no longer possible. The teacher shouted in the study, "Where have everyone gone?" People then walked back one by one, together. It's not possible to go back. He had a ruler, but he didn't use it often, and he also had rules for punishing him by kneeling.
但也不常用，普通总不过瞪几眼，大声道：“读书。”于是大家放开喉咙读一阵书，真是人声鼎沸。有念人远乎哉，我欲人斯人至矣。有念笑人齿缺曰狗窦大开的，有念上九乾隆勿用的。
But it's not often used. Usually he just stares a few times and says loudly, "Read." So everyone opened their throats and read for a while, and it was really loud. Some people think benevolence is far away. I want to be kind and benevolent. Some people think laughing at a man with missing teeth means a dog's sinuses are wide open. Some people think don't use the 9 hidden dragons.
有念掘土下，上错觉供包毛橘柚的先生自己也念书。后来我们的声音便低下去，静下去了。只有他还大声朗读着铁如意、指挥倜傥、一座皆惊呢，金婆罗、颠倒淋漓一，谦卑为最贺。
There are those who recite under the earth, above and below. There are gongbamo, tangerine and pomelo. Mr. himself also reads. Later, our voices lowered, became quiet, and passed away. Only he was still reading aloud, There are those who recite under the earth, above and below. There are gongbamo, tangerine and pomelo. Mr. himself also reads. Later, our voices lowered, became quiet, and passed away. Only he was still reading aloud, Tai Rui, commanding so suavely, everyone was shocked. Jean Boluo, upside down and dripping, thousands of cups not drunk yet, comma.
我疑心这是极好的文章，因为读到这里，他总是微笑起来，而且将头扬起，摇着向后面傲过去，傲过去。先生读书入神的时候，与我们是很相宜的。
I suspect this is an excellent article, because after reading this, he always smiles, and raises his head, shakes it, and twists it back. When Mr. is absorbed in reading, it is very suitable for us.
有几个便用纸糊的盔甲套在指甲上做戏。我是画画，用一种叫做经川纸的，蒙在小说的绣像上一个个描下来，像习字时候的影写一样。读的书多起来，画的画也多起来，书没有读成。
Some of them used paper armor to put on their nails and put on a show. I was a painter, using a kind of paper called Jingchuan paper, to trace the embroideries in the novel one by one, just like shadowing when practicing calligraphy. The more books I read, the more pictures I draw. But the books are not finished.
画的成绩却不少了，最成片段的是荡寇志和《西游记》的绣像，都有一大本。后来因为要钱用，卖给一个有钱的同窗了。他的父亲是开锡箔店的，听说现在自己已经做了店主。
There are many achievements in painting. The most complete ones are the embroidery portraits of Deng Ko-ji and Journey to the West, both of which have a large volume. Later, because I needed money, I sold it to a rich classmate. His father ran a tin-foil shop. I heard that he has now become a shop owner.
而且快要升到绅士的地位了。这东西早已没有了吧？9月18日，二藤野先生，东京也无非是这样。 上野的樱花烂漫的时节，望去却也像绯红的青云。
And he is about to reach the status of a gentleman. This thing no longer exists. September 18th, 2. Mr. Fujino, Tokyo is nothing more than this. When the cherry blossoms in Ueno are in full bloom, they look like light crimson clouds.
但花下也缺不了成群结队的清国留学生的速成班，头顶上盘着大辫子，顶的学生制帽的顶上高高耸起，形成一座富士山。也有解散辫子，盘得平的，除下帽来，油光可见。
But the flowers are also indispensable for the crash course of groups of Qing students studying abroad, with big braids on their heads, so that the top of the student hats rises high, forming a Mount Fuji. There are also those whose braids are untied and tied flat, and the hat is removed, and the oily shine can be seen.
宛如小姑娘的发髻一般，还要将脖子扭几扭，实在标致极了。中国留学生会馆的门房里有几本书买，有时还值得去一转。躺在上午，里面的几间洋房里倒也还可以坐坐的。但到傍晚
It's like a little girl's bun, and she has to twist her neck a few times. It's really beautiful. There are a few books to buy in the concierge of the Chinese Students Association, and sometimes it's worth a visit. If it's morning, you can still sit in some of the bungalows inside. But by evening,
有一间的地板便常不免要咚咚咚地响得震天，兼以满房烟尘抖乱。问问精通时事的人，答道那是在学跳舞。到别的地方去看看，如何呢？我就往仙台的医学专门学校去。
The floor of one room would often make a loud thumping noise, and the room would be filled with smoke and dust. Ask someone who is well versed in current affairs, and they would say, that's learning to dance. Go and see somewhere else. Look, how about it? I will go to the medical college in Sendai.
从东京出发，不久便到一处驿站，写道：日暮里。不知怎的，我到现在还记得这名目。其次却只记得水户了，这是明的移民朱顺水先生客死的地方。仙台是一个市镇，并不大，冬天冷得厉害。
Departing from Tokyo, I arrived at a post station soon and wrote, Nipperi. Somehow I still remember the title. Secondly, I only remember Mito, which is the place where Mr. Zhu Shunshui, a survivor of the Ming dynasty, died. Sendai is a small town. It is extremely cold in winter.
还没有中国的学生，大概是物以稀为贵吧。北京的白菜运往浙江，便用红头绳系住菜根，倒挂在水果店头，尊为浇菜。福建也生着的芦荟，一到北京就请进温室，且美其名曰龙舌兰。
There are no Chinese students yet. Perhaps it's because hope is more valuable than anything else. When the cabbage from Beijing is shipped to Zhejiang, the root is tied with a red rope and hung upside down in front of the fruit shop, revered as glue cabbage. The aloe vera that grows wild in Fujian is brought into the greenhouse as soon as it arrives in Beijing, and is euphemistically called agave.
我到仙台也颇受了这样的优待，不但学校不收学费，几个职员还为我的食宿操心。我先是住在监狱旁边一个客店里的，初冬已经颇冷，蚊子却还多，后来用被盖了全身，用衣服包了头脸。
I also received such preferential treatment when I arrived in Sendai. Not only did the school not charge tuition, but several staff members also took care of my room and board. I first stayed in an inn next to the prison. It was already quite cold in early winter, but there were still a lot of mosquitoes. Later, I covered my whole body with a quilt and wrapped my head and face with clothes.
只留2个鼻孔出气。在这呼吸不息的地方，蚊子竟无从插嘴，居然睡安稳了。饭食也不坏，但一位先生却以为这个店也包办求人的饭食。我住在那里不相宜，几次三番地说。
Leave only 2 nostrils to breathe out. In this place where breathing is endless, mosquitoes have no way to interrupt, and they sleep peacefully. The food isn't bad either. But a gentleman thought that this inn also provided meals for prisoners and it was not suitable for me to live there. He said this again and again.
我虽然觉得客店兼办求人的饭食和我不相干，然而好意难却，也只得别寻相宜的住处了。于是搬到别一家，离监狱也很远，可惜每天总要喝难以下咽的玉梗汤。
Although I felt that it was irrelevant to me that the inn also provided meals for the prisoners, but it was hard to resist such good intentions, so I had no choice but to find a suitable place to stay. So I moved to another house, which was far away from the prison. Unfortunately, I always had to drink taro soup that was hard to swallow every day.
从此就看见许多陌生的先生，听到许多新鲜的讲义。解剖学是2个教授分任的，最初是骨学，其实进来的是一个黑瘦的先生，八字须，戴着眼镜，携着一叠大大小小的书。
From then on, I saw many strange teachers and heard many new lectures. Anatomy is divided between 2 professors. Originally osteology. At that time, a dark and thin gentleman with a mustache and glasses came in, holding a stack of large and small books.
一将书放在讲台上，便用了缓慢而很有顿挫的声调，向学生介绍自己道：“我就是叫做藤野研九郎的。”后面有几个人笑起来了。他接着便讲述解剖学在日本发达的历史。
As soon as he placed the book on the podium, he introduced himself to the students in a slow and frustrated tone, My name is Fujino Jinkuro. A few people behind him laughed. He then talked about the history of the development of anatomy in Japan.
那些大大小小的书，便是从最初到现今关于这一门学问的著作。起初有几本是现装的，还有翻刻中国译本的，他们的翻译和研究新的医学并不比中国早。
Those books, large and small, are works on this subject from the beginning to the present. At first, a few books were thread-bound. There were also Chinese translations. Their translation and research on new medicine were no earlier than China's.
那坐在后面发笑的是上学年不及格的留级学生，在校已经1年，掌故颇为熟悉的了。他们便给新生讲演每个教授的历史。这藤野先生据说是穿衣服太模糊了。
The person sitting in the back laughing was a repeater who failed last school year. He had been in school for a year and was quite familiar with the story. They then lectured the freshmen on the history of each professor. Mr. Fujino is said to be too immodest in his clothes.
有时竟会忘记带领结，冬天是一件旧外套，寒战颤的。有一回上火车去，致使管车的疑心他是扒手，叫车里的客人大家小心些。他们的话大概是真的。
Sometimes he even forgets his tie. He wears an old coat in winter and is shivering. Once when he got on the train, the conductor suspected that he was a pickpocket and told the passengers in the car to be careful. What they say is probably true.
我就亲见他有一次上讲堂没有带领结。过了1星期，大约是星期6，他使助手来叫我了。道德研究室，见他坐在人骨和许多单独的头骨中间，他其实正在研究着头骨。
I personally saw him once in class without a tie. A week later, around Saturday, he sent his assistant to call me. When I arrived at the research room, I saw him sitting among human bones and many individual skulls. He was studying the skulls.
后来有一篇论文在本校的杂志上发表出来，我的讲义你能抄下来吗？他问。可以抄一点，拿来我看。我交出所抄的讲义去，他收下了，第2、3天便还我，并且说。
Later, a paper was published in the school's magazine. Can you copy my lecture notes? He asked. You can copy a little. Bring it to me. I handed over the lecture notes I copied, and he accepted them. He returned them to me the next day or 3 and said.
此后每1星期要送给他看一回。我拿下来打开看时，很吃了一惊，同时也感到一种不安和感激。原来我的讲义已经从头到末都用红笔添改过了，不但增加了许多脱漏的地方。
From now on, I will give it to him once a week. When I took it down and opened it, I was surprised, but also felt uneasy and grateful. It turns out that my lecture notes have been revised with red pen from beginning to end, and many omissions have been added.
连文法的错误也都一一订正，这样一直继续到教完了他所担任的功课——骨学、血管学、神经学。可惜我那时太不用功，有时也很任性。
Even the grammatical errors were corrected one by one. This continued until he finished teaching the subjects he was responsible for: osteology, vascular science, and neurology. It's a pity that I didn't work hard at that time and was also very willful at times.
还记得有一回，藤野先生将我叫到他的研究室里去，翻出我那讲义上的一个图来，是下臂的血管，指着向我和蔼地说道：“你看，你将这条血管移了一点位置了。”自然，这样一移。
I still remember one time when Mr. Fujino called me into his laboratory, pulled out a picture from my handout, which showed the blood vessels of the lower arm, pointed at it, and said kindly to me, Look, you moved this blood vessel a little bit, naturally, this way.
的确比较的好看些，然而解剖图不是美术，实物是那么样的，我们没法改换它。现在我给你改好了，以后你要全照着黑板上那样的画。但是我还不服气，口头答应着，心里却想到
It does look better, but anatomical diagrams are not art. The real thing is the same and we can't change it. Now I've changed it for you. From now on, you have to follow the drawing on the blackboard. But I was still not convinced. I agreed verbally, but thought in my heart,
图还是我画的不错，至于实在的情形，我心里自然记得的。学年试验完毕之后，我便到东京玩了一夏天，秋初再回学校，成绩早已发表了，同学100余人之中，我在中间。
I still draw the pictures well. As for the actual situation, I naturally remember it in my heart. After the test in the school year, I went to Tokyo for a summer and returned to school in early autumn. The results had already been announced. Among more than 100 classmates, I was in the middle.
不过是没有落地。这回藤野先生所担任的功课是解剖实习和局部解剖学。解剖实习了大概1星期，他又叫我去了，很高兴的，仍用了极有抑扬的声调对我说道。
But he didn't fail. This time, Mr. Fujino's assignment was anatomy practice and regional anatomy. After practicing anatomy for about a week, he asked me to go again. He was very happy and said to me in a very restrained tone.
我因为听说中国人是很敬重鬼的，所以很担心，怕你不肯解剖尸体。现在总算放心了，没有这回事。 但他也偶有使我很为难的时候。他听说中国的女人是裹脚的，但不知道详细。
I heard that Chinese people respect ghosts very much, so I was very worried because I was afraid that you would not dissect the corpse. Now I am finally relieved that this is not the case. But he also sometimes makes me very difficult. He heard that Chinese women have their feet bound, but he didn't know the details.
所以要问我怎么裹法，足骨变成怎样的畸形，还叹息道，总要看一看才知道，究竟是怎么一回事呢？有一天，本级的学生会干事到我狱里来了，要借我的讲义看，我捡出来交给他们。
So they asked me how to wrap my feet, and what kind of deformity my foot bones had become, and they sighed, "You have to take a look to find out. What is going on?" One day, the student council officer at this level came to me. I came to the apartment and wanted to borrow my lecture notes. I checked it out and gave it to them.
却只翻检了一通，并没有带走。但他们一走，邮差就送到一封很厚的信，拆开看时，第一句是“你改悔吧”，这是新约上的句子吧，但经托尔斯泰新近引用过的。其实正值日俄战争。
But they only checked it once and didn't take it away. But as soon as they left, the postman delivered a very thick letter. When I opened it and read it, the first sentence was, Repent. This is a sentence from the New Testament, but recently quoted by Tolstoy. This was during the Russo-Japanese War.
托老先生便写了一封给俄国和日本的皇帝的信，开首便是这一句。日本报纸上很斥责他的不逊，爱国青年也愤然，然而暗地里却早受了他的影响了。其次的话
Mr. Tuo wrote a letter to the emperors of Russia and Japan, which began with this sentence. Japanese newspapers criticized him for being disrespectful, and patriotic youths were also angry. However, secretly they had long been influenced by him. Secondly,
大略是说，上年解剖学试验的题目是藤野先生讲义上做了记号，我预先知道的，所以能有这样的成绩。末尾是匿名。我这才回忆到前几天的一件事，因为要开同级会。
Roughly speaking, the topic of last year's anatomy test was marked in Mr. Fujino's lecture notes, and I knew it in advance, so I was able to achieve such results. The end is anonymous. I just recalled something that happened a few days ago. Because there is a peer meeting to be held.
干事便在黑板上写广告，末一句是请全数到会，勿漏为要，而且在漏字旁边加了一个圈。我当时虽然觉到圈的可笑，但是毫不介意，这回才悟出那字也在讥刺我了。
The clerk wrote an advertisement on the blackboard. The last sentence was, "Please count them all so that they don't miss anything." He also added a circle next to the word missing. Although I thought it was ridiculous at the time, I didn't mind it at all. Only now did I realize that the word was also mocking me.
有眼我得了教员漏写出来的题目，我便将这事告知了藤野先生。有几个和我熟识的同学也很不平，一同去诘责干事托辞检查的无理，并且要求他们将检查的结果发表出来。
It is said that I got the problem revealed by the teacher. I informed Mr. Fujino about this matter. Several classmates who were familiar with me were also very dissatisfied, and went to accuse the clerk of the rudeness of pretexting the inspection, and asked them to publish the results of the inspection.
终于这流言消灭了，干事却又竭力运动，要收回那一封匿名信去。节末是我便将这托尔斯泰式的信退还了他们。中国是弱国，所以中国人当然是 dinner， 分数在60分以上。
Finally, the rumor was eliminated, but the clerk tried his best to withdraw the anonymous letter. In the end, I returned the Tolstoyan letter to them. China is a weak country, so of course the Chinese are imbeciles, with a score of over 60 points.
便不是自己的能力了，也无怪他们疑惑。但我接着便有参观枪毙中国人的命运了。第2年天教霉菌学，细菌的形状是全用电影来显示的，一段落已完，而还没有到下课的时候。
It is not their own ability, no wonder they are doubtful. But then I had the fate of visiting and shooting Chinese people. In the 2nd year, Tian taught mold science. The shapes of bacteria were all shown on film. The paragraph was finished, but the get out of class was not over yet.
编影几片时事的片子，自然都是日本战胜俄国的情形，但偏有中国人夹在里边，给俄国人做侦探，被日本军捕获，要枪毙了。围着看的也是一群中国人，在讲堂里的还有一个我。万岁！
There were a few movies about current events, and naturally they were all about Japan's victory over Russia. There were a few movies about current events, and naturally they were all about Japan's victory over Russia. But there were Chinese people caught in it. I worked as a detective for the Russians, was captured by the Japanese army, and was about to be shot. A group of Chinese people were watching around me. There was also me in the lecture hall. Long live!
他们都拍掌欢呼起来。这种欢呼是每看一片都有的，但在我这一声却特别听得刺耳。此后回到中国来，我看见那些闲看枪毙犯人的人们，他们也何尝不酒醉似的喝彩呜呼。
They all clapped and cheered. Such cheers are common in every film I watch, but to me, this one was particularly harsh. After that, when I returned to China, I saw those people who were just watching the execution of prisoners, and they were cheering like they were drunk. Wow!
无法可想，但在那时那地，我的意见却变化了。到第2学年的终结，我便去寻藤野先生，告诉他我将不学医学，并且离开这仙台。他的脸色仿佛有些悲哀，似乎想说话，但竟没有说。
Unthinkable. But at that time and place, my opinion changed. At the end of the 2nd academic year, I went to find Mr. Fujino and told him that I would not study medicine and leave Sendai. Unthinkable. But at that time and place, my opinion changed. At the end of the 2nd academic year, I went to find Mr. Fujino and told him that I would not study medicine and leave Sendai. His face seemed a little sad, and he seemed to want to speak, but he didn't.
我想去学生物学，先生教给我的学问也还有用的。其实我并没有决意要学生物学，因为看得他有些凄然，便说了一个慰安他的谎话，为医学而教的解剖学之类。
I want to study biology, and the knowledge my husband taught me is still useful. Actually, I didn't decide to study biology, because I saw him a little sad, so I told a lie to comfort him. Teaching anatomy for medicine and so on.
怕于生物学也没有什么大帮助。他叹息说，将走的前几天，他叫我到他家里去，交给我一张照相，后面写着2个字道：惜别，还说希望将我的也送他。但我这时是直没有照相了。
Being afraid of biology doesn't help much either. He sighed. A few days before he left, he asked me to come to his home and handed me a photo. There were 2 words written on the back, farewell, and he also said that he hoped to give mine to him. But I didn't have time to take pictures at this time.
他便叮嘱我将来照了寄给他， 并且实时通信告诉他此后的状况。我离开仙台之后，就多年没有照过相，又因为状况也无聊，说起来无非使他失望，便连信也怕敢写了。
He then told me to take the photo and send it to him in the future, and he would also send letters to him from time to tell him about the future situation. After I left Sendai, I hadn't taken any photos for many years, and because the situation was boring, talking about it would only disappoint him, so he was afraid to even write a letter.
经过的年月一多，话更无从说起，所以虽然有时想写信，却又难以下笔，这样的一直到现在，竟没有寄过一封信和一张照片。从他那一面看起来，是一去之后杳无消息了。但不知怎地。
More and more years have passed and I have no words to talk about, so although I sometimes want to write a letter, I find it difficult to write. Until now, I have not sent a letter or a photo. From his side, it seemed that there was no news since he left. But somehow,
我总还时时记起他，在我所认为我师的之中，他是最使我感激、给我鼓励的一个。有时我常常想，他的对于我的热心的希望、不倦的教诲，小而言之，是为中国，就是希望中国有新的医学。
I always remember him. Among all the teachers I consider him, he is the one who makes me most grateful and encourages me. Sometimes I often think, his enthusiastic hope for me and tireless teachings are, in short, for China, and he hopes that China will have new medicine.
大而言之，是为学术，就是希望新的医学转到中国去。他的性格，在我的眼里和心里是伟大的，虽然他的姓名并不为许多人所知道。他所改正的讲义，我曾经订成3厚本收藏着的。
Generally speaking, it is for academic purposes, and I hope that new medicine will be spread to China. His character is great in my eyes and heart, although his name is not known to many people. I once bound the lecture notes he corrected into 3 thick volumes and kept them in my collection.
将作为永久的纪念。不幸7年前迁居的时候，中途毁坏了一口书箱，失去半箱书，恰巧这讲义也遗失在内了。责成运送局去找寻，既无回信。
It will serve as a lasting memorial. Unfortunately, when I moved house 7 years ago, a book box was destroyed and half the box of books was lost. It happened that these lecture notes were also lost. I asked the Transportation Bureau to look for it, but there was no reply.
只有他的照相，至今还挂在我北京寓居的东墙上，书桌对面。每当夜间疲倦，正想偷懒时，仰面在灯光中瞥见他黑瘦的面貌，似乎正要说出抑扬顿挫的话来，便使我忽有良心发现。
Only his photograph is still hanging on the east wall of my Beijing residence, opposite my desk. Whenever I feel tired at night and want to be lazy, I look up and catch a glimpse of his dark and thin face in the light, as if he is about to speak in a measured tone, and I suddenly wake up to my conscience.
而且增加勇气了，于是点上一支烟，再继续写些为正人君子之流所深恶痛疾的文字。10月12日，3空一己鲁镇的酒店的格局是和别处不同的，都是当街一个曲尺形的大柜台。
And I had more courage, so I lit a cigarette and continued to write some words that were deeply hated by the gentlemen and others. October 12th, 3, Kong Iji. The layout of hotels in Lu Town is different from other places. They all have a large square-shaped counter on the street.
柜里面预备着热水，可以随时温酒。做工的人傍午傍晚散了工，每花4文铜钱买一碗酒，这是20多年前的事。现在每碗要涨到10文，靠柜外站着，热热的喝了休息。 倘肯多花一文。
There is hot water prepared in the cabinet, so you can warm the wine at any time. Workers, after taking a break from work in the afternoon and evening, would spend 4 copper coins each time to buy a bowl of wine. This happened more than 20 years ago, and now each bowl costs 10 copper coins, and stand against the counter. Have a warm drink and rest, if you are willing to spend an extra penny.
便可以买一碟盐竹笋或者茴香豆做下酒屋了。如果出到10几文，那就能买一样荤菜，但这些顾客多是短衣帮，大抵没有这样阔绰。只有穿长衫的才躲进店面隔壁的房子里要酒要菜。
Then you can buy a plate of salt-cooked bamboo shoots or fennel beans to drink with. If you pay more than 10 cents, you can buy a meat dish. But these customers are mostly from the short-clothed gang and are probably not so wealthy. Only those wearing long gowns walked into the house next to the store and asked for wine and food.
慢慢的作贺。我从12岁起便在镇口的咸亨酒店里当伙计。掌柜说，样子太傻，怕侍候不了长衫主顾，就在外面做点事罢。外面的短衣主顾虽然容易说话。
Sit and drink slowly. I have been working as a waiter in the Xianheng Hotel at the entrance of the town since I was 12 years old. The shopkeeper said that I looked too stupid and was afraid that I would not be able to serve the long-gown customers, so I just did something outside. The short-coated patrons outside are easy to talk to.
但唠唠叨叨、缠家不清的也很不少。他们往往要亲眼看着黄酒从坛子里舀出，看过胡子底里有水没有，又轻看将胡子放在热水里，然后放心。在这严重监督下，掺水也很为难。
But there are also quite a few people who are nagging and confusing. They often have to watch with their own eyes the rice wine being scooped out of the jar, see if there is water at the bottom of the pot, and see if the pot is placed in hot water. Then they can rest assured, under such severe supervision, the water is also in trouble.
所以过了几天，掌柜又说我干不了这事。幸亏箭头的情面大，辞退不得，便改为专管温酒的一种无聊职务了。我从此便整天的站在柜台里，专管我的职务，虽然没有什么失职。
So a few days later, the shopkeeper said again that I couldn't do it. Fortunately, the person who recommended me was so kind that I couldn't be fired, so I was assigned to the boring job of warming wine. From then on, I stood at the counter all day long, focusing on my duties. Although there is no dereliction of duty.
但总觉得有些单调，有些无聊。掌柜是一副凶脸孔，主顾也没有好生气，叫人活泼不得，只有孔乙己到店才可以笑几声，所以至今还记得。孔乙己是站着喝酒而穿长衫的唯一的人。
But I always feel a little monotonous and boring. The shopkeeper had a fierce face, and the patrons were not friendly either, and he was not lively. Only when Kong Yi came to the shop could he laugh a few times, so I still remember it. Kong Yi was the only person standing drinking and wearing a long gown.
他身材很高大，青白脸色，皱纹间时常加些伤痕，一部乱蓬蓬的花白的胡子。穿的虽然是长衫，可是又脏又破，似乎10多年没有补，也没有洗。他对人说话，总是满口之乎者也。
He is tall, with a pale complexion and often scars between his wrinkles, and a shaggy gray beard. Although he was wearing a long gown, it was dirty and torn. It seemed that it had not been mended or washed in more than 10 years. When he talks to people, he is always full of words.
叫人半懂不懂的。因为他姓孔， 别人便从描红纸上的上大人孔乙己这半懂不懂的话里，替他取下一个绰号，叫做孔乙己。孔乙己一到店，所有喝酒的人便都看着他笑，有的叫道：“孔乙己。”
Teach people half-understood things. Because his surname was Kong, others nicknamed him Kong Iji from the semi-understandable words, Master Kong Iji, written on the red paper. As soon as Kong Iji arrived at the shop, all the drinkers looked at him and smiled, and some shouted, Kong Iji.
你脸上又添上新伤疤了。他不回答，对柜里说：“温2碗酒，要1碟茴香豆。”便排出9文大钱。他们又故意的高声嚷道：“你一定又偷了人家的东西了。”孔乙己睁大眼睛说：“
You have a new scar on your face. He didn't answer, but said to the cabinet, I'll warm 2 bowls of wine and ask for a plate of fennel beans. Then they paid out 9 cents of money. They shouted loudly and deliberately, You must have stolen someone else's thing again. Kong Iji opened his eyes wide and said,
你怎么这样凭空污人清白？什么清白？我前天亲眼见你偷了何家的书，吊着他。”孔乙己便涨红了脸，额上的青筋条条绽出，争辩道：“窃书不能算偷，窃书，读书人的事能算偷吗？”
How can you accuse someone of innocence out of thin air? What innocence? I saw you stealing the He family's books the day before yesterday and beating them while hanging. Kong Iji blushed, veins popped out on his forehead, and argued, stealing a book cannot be considered stealing a book. Can what happens to a scholar be considered stealing?
接连便是难懂的话，什么君子固穷，什么者乎之类，引得众人都哄笑起来。店内外充满了快活的空气。听人家背地里谈论，孔乙己原来也读过书，但终于没有进学，又不会营生。
There were words that were difficult to understand one after another, such as, a gentleman is poor, he is so, etc., which caused everyone to burst into laughter. The atmosphere inside and outside the store was full of joy. I heard people talking about it behind their backs. Kong Iji used to be educated, but in the end he didn't go to school and he couldn't make a living.
于是愈过愈穷，弄到将要讨饭了。幸而写的一笔好字，便替人家抄书，换1碗饭吃。可惜他又有一样坏脾气，便是好喝懒做。做不到几天，便连人和书籍、纸张笔砚一齐失踪。如是几次。
As a result, he became poorer and poorer, until he was about to beg for food. Fortunately, if I write a good word, I will pay for someone else's book in exchange for a bowl of rice. It's a pity that he has another bad temper, that is, he likes to drink and is lazy to do things. Within a few days, people, books, papers, pens, and inkstones all disappeared. How many times?
叫他抄书的人也没有了。孔乙己没有法，便免不了偶然做些偷窃的事。但他在我们店里品行却比别人都好，就是从不拖欠。虽然见货没有现钱，暂时记在粉板上，但不出1月定然还清。
There is no one who asked him to give money to the book. Kong Iji had no choice but to steal from time to time. But in our store, his conduct is better than others, that is, he never defaults on arrears. There is no one who asked him to give money to the book. Kong Iji had no choice but to steal from time to time. But in our store, his conduct is better than others, that is, he never defaults on arrears. Although he sometimes has no cash, and temporarily writes it down on the pink board, he will definitely pay it off within a month.
从粉板上拭去了孔乙己的名字。孔乙己喝过半碗酒， 涨红的脸色渐渐复了原，旁人便又问道：“孔乙己，你当真认识字吗？”孔乙己看着问他的人，显出不屑质辩的神气。他们便接着说道：
Kong Yiji's name was wiped off the pink board. Kong Yiji drank half a bowl of wine, and his flushed face gradually recovered. Someone else asked again, Kong Yiji, do you really know how to read? Kong Yiji looked at the person who asked him, showing an air of disdain to argue. They then continued.
你怎地连半个秀才也捞不到呢？孔乙己立刻显出颓唐不安模样，脸上笼上了一层灰色，嘴里说些话，这回可是全是知乎者也之类一些不懂了。在这时候，众人也都哄笑起来。
How come you can't even get half a scholar? Kong Yiji immediately looked depressed and uneasy. His face was covered with a layer of gray, and he said some words. This time it was all nonsense, some of which he did not understand. At this time, everyone burst into laughter.
店内外充满了快活的空气。在这些时候，我可以附和着笑，掌柜是绝不责备的。而且掌柜见了孔乙己，也每每这样问他，引人发笑。孔乙己自己知道不能和他们谈天，便只好向孩子说话。
The atmosphere inside and outside the store is full of joy. At these times, I can laugh along, and the shopkeeper will never blame me. Moreover, when the shopkeeper met Kong Yiji, he would always ask him this question, which made people laugh. Kong Yiji knew that he could not talk to them, so he had no choice but to talk to the children.
有一回对我说道：“你读过书吗？”我略略点一点头。他说：“读过书，我便考你一考。茴香豆的茴字怎样写的？”我想，讨饭一样的人也配考我吗？便回过脸去，不再理会。孔乙己等了许久。
Once he said to me, Have you read the book? I nodded slightly. He said, If you have read the book, I will give you a test. How do you write the word fennel for fennel beans? I thought, is a person like begging worthy of taking my test? Then he turned around and ignored him. Kong Yiji waited for a long time.
很恳切地说道：“不能写吧？我教给你，记着。这些字应该记着，将来做掌柜的时候写账要用。”我暗想，我和掌柜的等级还很远呢，而且我们掌柜也从不将茴香豆上账，又好笑又不耐烦。
I said sincerely, Can't you just write it? I'll teach you, remember. These words should be memorized. When you become a shopkeeper in the future, I said sincerely, Can't you just write it? I'll teach you, remember. These words should be memorized. When you become a shopkeeper in the future, you will need to use them when writing accounts. I secretly thought that I was still far from the shopkeeper's level. And our shopkeeper never pays the account for fennel beans. It's funny and impatient.
懒懒地答他道：“谁要你教？不是草头底下一个来回的回字吗？”孔乙己显出极高兴的样子，将2个指头的长指甲敲着柜台，点头说：“对呀，对呀。回字有4样写法，你知道吗？”我愈不耐烦了。
He answered lazily, Who wants you to teach me? Isn't it just the word, hui, that goes back and forth under the grass? Kong Yiji looked extremely happy, tapped the long nails of 2 fingers on the counter, nodded and said, Yes. Yes. There are 4 ways to write the word, hui, do you know? I am getting more and more impatient.
努着嘴走远。孔乙己刚用指甲蘸了酒，想在柜上写字，见我毫不热心，便有叹一口气，显出极惋惜的样子。 有几回，邻舍孩子听得笑声，也赶热闹，围住了孔乙己，他便给他们茴香豆吃。
Walk away with your mouth open. Kong Yiji had just dipped his nails in the wine and wanted to write something on the cabinet. When he saw that I was not enthusiastic, he sighed again, showing a very regretful look. Several times, the neighborhood children heard the laughter and joined in the fun, surrounding Kong Yiji. So he gave them fennel beans to eat.
一人一颗，孩子吃完豆仍然不散，眼睛都望着碟子。孔乙己着了慌，伸开五指将碟子罩住，弯腰下去说道：“不多了，我已经不多了。”直起身又看一看豆，自己摇头说：“不多不多，多乎哉？不多也。”
One per person. After the child finished eating the beans, he still stayed with his eyes looking at the plate. Kong Yiji panicked, stretched out his fingers to cover the plate, bent down and said, "Not much, I don't have much anymore." He straightened up and looked at the beans again, shook his head and said, "Not much, not much. Not much. Really? Not much."
于是这一群孩子都在笑声里走散了。孔乙己是这样的使人快活，可是没有他，别人也便这么过。有一天，大约是中秋前的2、3天，掌柜正在慢慢的结账，取下粉板，忽然说
So the group of children dispersed amid laughter. Kong Yiji makes people happy in this way, but without him, others would live like this. One day, about 2 or 3 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, the shopkeeper was slowly checking out, taking off the pink board, and suddenly said,
孔乙己长久没有来了，还欠19个钱呢。我才也觉得他的确长久没有来了。一个喝酒的人说道：“他怎么会来？他打折了腿了。”掌柜说：“哦，他总仍旧是偷，这一回是自己发昏。”
Kong Yiji has not been here for a long time. I still owe 19 cents. I also felt that he really hadn't come for a long time. A drinker said, "How could he come? He broke his leg." The shopkeeper said, "Oh. He always steals." This time, it was me who fainted.
竟偷到丁举人家里去了。他家的东西偷得的吗？后来怎么样？怎么样？先写不便，后来是打了大半夜，再打折了腿。后来呢？后来打折了腿了。打折了怎样呢？怎样？谁晓得？许是死了。
He actually stole it to Ding Ju's house. Can his belongings be stolen? What happened next? How about it? First I wrote my plea, and then I was beaten. I was beaten for most of the night, and then my leg was broken. What happened next? Then I broke my leg. How about the discount? How? Who knows? Sue is dead.
掌柜也不再问，仍然慢慢地算他的账。中秋之后，秋风是一天2比1天，看看将近初冬，我整天的靠着火，也需穿上棉袄了。一天的下半天，没有一个顾客，我正合了眼坐着。
The shopkeeper stopped asking and continued to settle his accounts slowly. After the Mid-Autumn Festival, the autumn wind is getting cooler day by day, and it is almost early winter. I have to put on a cotton-padded jacket even if I rely on the fire all day. During the second half of the day, there wasn't a single customer, so I just sat there with my eyes closed.
忽然间听得一个声音，温一碗酒。这声音虽然极低，却很耳熟。看时又全没有人。站起来向外一望，那孔乙己便在柜台下对了门槛坐着。 他脸上黑而且瘦，已经不成样子，穿一件破夹袄。
Suddenly I heard a voice, warm a bowl of wine. Although this voice was very low, it was very familiar. When I looked, there was no one at all. Standing up and looking outside, Kong Yiji was sitting under the counter facing the threshold. His face is dark and thin, and he has lost his appearance. He wears a torn jacket.
盘着两腿，下面垫一个蒲包，用草绳在肩上挂住。见了我，又说道：“温一碗酒。”掌柜也伸出头去，一面说：“孔乙己吗？你还欠19个钱呢。”孔乙己很颓唐的仰面答道：“这下回还清罢。这一回是现钱。”
He crossed his legs, put a cattail bag underneath, and hung it on his shoulders with a straw rope. When he saw me, he said again, "Warm a bowl of wine." The shopkeeper also stretched out his head and said, "Kong Yiji?" He crossed his legs, put a cattail bag underneath, and hung it on his shoulders with a straw rope. When he saw me, he said again, "Warm a bowl of wine." The shopkeeper also stretched out his head and said, "Kong Yiji? You still owe me $19. Kong Yiji looked up dejectedly and replied, "I'll pay it off next time."
酒要好，掌柜仍然同平常一样笑着对他说：“孔乙己，你又偷了东西了。”但他这回却不十分分辨，单说了一句：“不要取笑。”取笑？要是不偷，怎么会打断腿？孔乙己低声说道：“跌断，跌。”他的眼色。
The wine should be good. The shopkeeper smiled and said to him as usual, "Kong Yiji, you stole something again." But this time he was not very argumentative and just said, "Don't make fun of me, make fun of?" If he didn't steal, how could he break his leg? Kong Yiji whispered, "Fall, fall, fall." The look in his eyes.
很像恳求掌柜不要再提。此时已经聚集了几个人，便和掌柜都笑了。我温了酒，端出去放在门槛上。他从破衣袋里摸出4文大钱，放在我手里，见他满手是泥，原来他便用这手走来的。
It's a lot like begging the shopkeeper not to mention it again. At this time, several people had gathered, and both he and the shopkeeper laughed. I warmed the wine, took it out, and placed it on the threshold. He took out 4 large coins from his ragged pocket and put it in my hand. I saw that his hands were full of mud. It turned out that he had walked here with these hands.
不一会，他喝完酒，便又在旁人的说笑声中坐着用这手慢慢走去了。自此以后，又长久没有看见孔乙己。到了年关，掌柜取下粉板说：“孔乙己还欠19个钱呢。”到第2年的端午，又说。
After a while, he finished his drink, sat down and slowly walked away with his hands amidst the laughter of others. From then on, Kong Yiji was not seen for a long time. At the end of the year, the shopkeeper took off the pink board and said, "Kong Yiji still owes 19 yuan." On the Dragon Boat Festival of the next year, he said again, "Kong Yiji still owes 19 yuan."
孔乙己还欠19个钱呢。到中秋可是没有说，再到年关也没有看见他。我到现在终于没有见，大约孔乙己的确死了。1919年3月，4少年闰土。
Kong Yiji still owes 19 yuan. But I didn't say anything about him until the Mid-Autumn Festival, and I didn't see him until the New Year's Eve. I finally haven't seen him until now. Probably Kong Yiji is indeed dead. March 1919. 4. Young Runtu.
深蓝的天空中挂着一轮金黄的圆月， 下面是海边的沙地，都种着一望无际的碧绿的西瓜。其间有一个11、12岁的少年，像戴银圈，手捏一柄钢叉，像一匹茶尽力的刺去。
A golden full moon hangs in the deep blue sky. Below is the sandy land by the seaside, where endless green watermelons are planted. Among them is a boy of 11 or 12 years old, wearing a silver ring around his neck and holding a steel fork in his hand, stabbing at a harpoon with all his strength.
那茶却将身一扭，反从他的胯下逃走了。这少年便是闰土。我认识他时也不过10多岁，离现在将有30年了。那时我的父亲还在世，家境也好，我正是一个少爷。那一年
Na Yuan twisted her body and escaped from his crotch. This young man is Runtu. When I met him, he was only over 10 years old, which was about 30 years ago. At that time, my father was still alive and my family was well off, so I was just a young master. That year,
我家是一件大祭祀的执年，这祭祀说是30多年才能轮到一回，所以很郑重。正月里供祖像，贡品很多，祭器很讲究，拜的人也很多，祭器也很要防偷去。我家只有一个忙月。
in my family, there is a big sacrifice for the new year. It is said that this sacrifice only happens once every 30 years, so it is very solemn. During the first month of the year, there are many offerings to the ancestors, and the sacrificial vessels are very particular. There are also many worshippers, and the sacrificial vessels must be guarded against theft. My family only has one busy month.
我们这里给人做工的分3种，整年给一定人家做工的叫长年，按日给人做工的叫短工，自己也种地，只在过年过节以及收租时候来给一定的人家做工的称忙月，忙不过来。
There are 3 types of workers here. Those who work for a certain family throughout the year are called long-term workers. Those who work for a certain family on a daily basis are called short-term workers. Those who also farm their own land and only come to work for a certain family during the new year, holidays and rent collection time, it's called a busy month, and I can't get enough of it.
他便对父亲说，可以叫他的儿子闰土来管祭器的。我的父亲允许了，我也很高兴，因为我早听到闰土这名字，而且知道他和我仿佛年纪，闰月生的5行缺土，所以他的父亲叫他闰土。
He then told his father that he could ask his son Runtu to take charge of the sacrificial vessels. My father agreed. I was also very happy, because I had heard the name Runtu a long time ago, and knew that he and I were the same age, born in the leap month, and the 5 elements lacked earth, so his father called him Runtu.
他是能装匠捉小鸟雀的。我于是日日盼望新年，新年到，闰土也就到了。好容易到了年末，有一日，母亲告诉我闰土来了，我便飞跑的去看。他正在厨房里，紫色的圆脸，头戴一顶小毡帽。
He can pretend to be a bird and catch small birds. I therefore look forward to the new year every day. When the new year arrives, Runtu will also arrive. Finally, at the end of the year, one day, my mother told me that Runtu was coming, so I ran to see her. He is in the kitchen, with a round purple face and a little felt hat on his head.
颈上套一个明晃晃的银项圈，这可见他的父亲十分爱他，怕他死去，所以在神佛面前许下愿心，用圈子将他套住了。他见人很怕羞，只是不怕我，没有旁人的时候，便和我说话。
There is a bright silver collar around his neck, which shows that his father loves him very much and is afraid that he will die. So he made a wish in front of gods and Buddhas and tied him with the collar. He is very shy when meeting people, but he is not afraid of me. He talks to me when there are no other people around.
于是不到半日，我们便熟识了。我们那时候不知道谈些什么，只记得闰土很高兴，说是上城之后见了许多没有见过的东西。第二日，我便要他捕鸟，他说这不能，需大雪下了才好。
So within half a day, we became familiar with each other. We didn't know what we were talking about at that time. I just remember that Runta was very happy, saying that he saw many things he had never seen before after going to the city. The next day, I asked him to catch birds. He said, "This can't be done. It will only be possible if it snows heavily."
我们沙地上下了雪，我扫出一块空地来，用短棒支起一个大竹匾，撒下鼻骨，看鸟雀来吃时，我远远地将附在棒上的绳子只一拉，那鸟雀就罩在竹匾下了。什么都有，稻鸡、角鸡、鹂鸪、蓝贝。
It snowed on our sandy ground, so I cleared out a clearing, used a short stick to prop up a big bamboo plaque, and scattered the grain. When I watched the birds come to eat, I pulled the rope tied to the stick from a distance. The bird is covered under the bamboo plaque. There is everything: rice chicken, horned chicken, swan, blue-backed.
我于是又很盼望下雪。闰土又对我说，现在太冷，你夏天到我们这里来。我们日里到海边捡贝壳去，红的绿的都有，鬼剑帕也有，观音手也有。晚上我和爹管西瓜去，你也去。管贼吗？
So I looked forward to snowing again. Runta said to me again, "It's too cold now. Come to us in the summer. We go to the beach to collect shells during the day. There are red and green ones, there are also ghosts, and there are also guanine hands. At night, we go to the beach to collect shells. Dad and I will take care of the watermelons, and you will take care of the thieves, too."
不是，走路的人口渴了摘一个瓜吃，我们这里是不算偷的。要管的是獾猪、刺猬、茶。月亮地下，你听，啦啦的响了，茶在咬瓜了。你便捏了胡叉，轻轻地走去。
No. If a pedestrian is thirsty and picks a melon to eat, it is not considered stealing here. The ones to take care of are badgers, pigs, hedgehogs, and harpies. Under the moon, listen, there is a crackling sound, and the turtle is biting the melon. Then you squeezed the hoocha and walked gently.
我那时并不知道这所谓茶的是怎么一件东西，便是现在也没有知道，只是无端地觉得状如小狗而很凶猛。它不咬人吗？有胡叉呢。走到了，看见茶了，你便刺。这畜生很伶俐。
I didn't know what this so-called animal was at the time, and I still don't know it now, but I just felt it looked like a puppy and was ferocious for no reason. Doesn't he bite? There's a hoocha here. When you get there, when you see a harpoon, just bite it. This beast is very smart.
倒向你奔来，反从胯下窜了。它的皮毛是油一般的滑，我素不知道天下有这许多新鲜事，海边有如许五色的贝壳，西瓜有这样危险的经历，我先前单知道它在水果店里出卖罢了。
He ran toward you, but escaped from your crotch. His fur is as smooth as oil. I never knew that there are so many new things in the world. There are such colorful shells on the beach. Watermelons have such dangerous experiences. I only knew that he was sold in the fruit shop.
我们沙地里潮汛要来的时候，就有许多跳鱼儿只是跳，都有青蛙似的两个脚啊！闰土的心里有无穷无尽的稀奇的事，都是我往常的朋友所不知道的。 他们不知道一些事。
In our sandy land, when the tide is coming, there are many jumping fish, just jumping, with 2 legs like frogs. Ah! There are endless strange things in Runta's heart, and they are all mine. They don't know something that their usual friends don't know. In our sandy land, when the tide is coming, there are many jumping fish, just jumping, with 2 legs like frogs. Ah! There are endless strange things in Runta's heart, and they are all mine. They don't know something that their usual friends don't know.
闰土在海边时，他们都和我一样，只看见院子里高墙上的4角的天空。可惜正月过去了，闰土须回家里去，我急得大哭，他也躲到厨房里，哭着不肯出门，但终于被他父亲带走了。
When Runta was at the seaside. Like me, they all only saw the sky at the 4 corners of the high wall in the yard. Unfortunately, the first month passed and Runta had to go home. I was so anxious that I burst into tears. He also hid in the kitchen, crying and refusing to go out, but he was finally taken away by his father.
他后来还托他的父亲带给我一包贝壳和几只很好看的鸟毛，我也曾送他1、2次东西，但从此没有再见面。吾故乡，我冒了严寒，回到相隔2000余里，别了20余年的故乡去。
He later asked his father to bring me a pack of shells and some nice bird feathers. I also gave him things once or twice, but we never met again. 5. Hometown. I braved the severe cold to return to my hometown, which is more than 2,000 miles away, and I have been away for more than 20 years.
时候既然是深冬，渐进故乡时，天气又阴晦了，冷风吹进船舱中，呜呜地响。从棚隙向外一望，苍黄的天底下，远近横着几个萧索的荒村，没有一些活气。我的心禁不住悲凉起来了。啊！
Since it was late winter, as we approached my hometown, the weather became gloomy again. The cold wind blew into the cabin with a whistling sound. Looking out from the slit, I saw a few desolate deserted villages far and near under the pale yellow sky. Lively. My heart couldn't help but feel sad. Ah!
这不是我20年来时时记得的故乡，我所记得的故乡全不如此。我的故乡好得多了，但要我记起它的美丽，说出它的家出来，却又没有影像，没有言辞了，仿佛也就如此。
Isn't this the hometown I remember from time to time in the past 20 years? The hometown I remember is nothing like this. My hometown is much better. But if I were to remember his beauty and describe his good qualities, I would have no images or words. It seems like that's it.
于是我自己解释说，故乡本也如此，虽然没有进步，也未必有如我所感的悲凉，这只是我自己心情的改变罢了。因为我这次回乡本没有什么好心绪，我这次是专为了别他而来的。
So I explained to myself, the same is true in my hometown, although there is no progress, it may not be as sad as I feel. This is just a change in my own mood, because I am not in a good mood when I return to my hometown this time. I came here specifically to say goodbye to him this time.
我们多年聚族而居的老屋已经共同卖给别姓了，交屋的期限只在本年，所以必须赶在正月初1以前永别了熟识的老屋，而且远离了熟识的故乡，搬家到我在谋时的异地去。
The old house where we have lived together as a family for many years has been sold to another family member. The deadline for handing over the house is only this year. Therefore, we must hurry up before the first day of the first lunar month to say goodbye to the familiar old house and stay away from the familiar places. Hometown, move to a different place where I am looking for food.
第二日清早晨，我到了我家的门口了。瓦楞上许多枯草的断茎当风抖着，正在说明这老屋难免易主的原因。几房的本家大约已经搬走了，所以很寂静。我到了自家的房外。
The next morning I arrived at the door of my house. Many broken stems of dead grass on the corrugated roof were shaking in the wind, explaining why this old house would inevitably change owners. The main family who lived a few rooms away had probably moved out, so it was very quiet. I arrived outside my house.
我的母亲早已迎着出来了，接着便飞出了8岁的侄儿红。我的母亲很高兴，但也藏着许多凄凉的神情，叫我坐下歇息喝茶，且不谈搬家的事。红儿没有见过我。
My mother had already come out to greet me, and then my 8-year-old nephew Hunger flew out. My mother was very happy, but she also had a lot of desolation in her face. She taught me to sit down, rest, and drink tea, not to mention moving. Hunger has never seen me.
远远的对面站着只是看，但我们终于谈到搬家的事。我说外间的寓所已经租定了，又买了几件家具，此外需将家里所有的木器卖去，再去增添。母亲也说好，而且行李也略已齐集。
Standing opposite from a distance just watching. But we finally talked about moving. I said that the apartment outside had been rented, and I bought a few pieces of furniture. In addition, I had to sell all the wooden furniture in the house and add more. Mother also said yes, and the luggage has been gathered.
木器不便搬运的也小半卖去了，只是收不起钱来。你休息1-2天，去拜望亲戚本家一回，我们便可以走了。母亲说：“是的。”还有闰土，他每到我家来时，总问起你，很想见你一回面。
Most of the wooden items that were difficult to move were sold, but the money could not be collected. You can rest for a day or two and visit your relatives and family, and then we can leave. Mother said. Yes. And Runtu, every time he comes to my house, he always asks about you and wants to see you.
我已经将你到家的大约日期通知他，他也许就要来了。这时候，我的脑里忽然闪出一幅神异的图画来，深蓝的天空中挂着一轮金黄的圆月，下面是海边的沙地。
I have informed him of the approximate date of your arrival, and he may be coming soon. At this time, a magical picture suddenly flashed in my mind. A golden full moon hung in the deep blue sky, and below was the sandy land on the seaside.
都种着一望无际的碧绿的西瓜，其间有一个11、12岁的少年，像戴银圈，手捏一柄钢叉，像一匹茶儿尽力地刺去，那茶却将身一扭，反从他的胯下逃走了。这少年便是闰土。
There are endless green watermelons growing in them. Among them is an 11 or 12-year-old boy with a silver ring in his neck and a steel fork in his hand. He tries his best to stab a harpoon, but the harpoon twists his body and turns around. Escaped from his crotch. This young man is Runtu.
我认识他时也不过10多岁，离现在将有30年了。那时我的父亲还在世，家境也好，我正是一个少爷。那一年，我家是一件大祭祀的值年3，这祭祀说是30多年才能轮到一回。
When I met him, he was only over 10 years old, which was about 30 years ago. At that time, my father was still alive and my family was well off, so I was just a young master. That year, my family held a big sacrifice for the new year, 3. It is said that this sacrifice only comes once in more than 30 years.
所以很郑重，正月里供祖像， 贡品很多，祭器很讲究，拜的人也很多，祭器也很要防偷去。我家只有一个忙月，我们这里给人做工的分3种，整年给一定人家做工的叫长工。
Therefore, it is very solemn. During the first month, ancestor images are offered. There are many offerings. The sacrificial vessels are very particular. There are many people worshipping, and the sacrificial vessels must also be guarded against theft. My family only has one busy month. There are 3 types of workers here. Those who work for a certain family throughout the year are called long-term workers.
按日给人做工的叫短工，自己也种地，只在过年过节以及收租时候来给一定人家做工的称忙月。忙不过来，他便对父亲说，可以叫他的儿子闰土来管祭器的。我的父亲允许了。
Those who work for others on a daily basis are called day laborers. Those who also farm their own land and only come to work for certain people during the new year, festivals and rent collection periods are called busy months. When he was too busy, he told his father that he could call his son Runtu to take care of the sacrificial vessels. My father allowed it.
我也很高兴，因为我早听到闰土这名字，而且知道他和我仿佛年纪，闰月生的5行缺土4，所以他的父亲叫他闰土。他是能装、攻精、捉小鸟雀的。我于是日日盼望新年到。
I am also very happy, because I have heard the name Runtu for a long time, and I know that he is the same age as me, born in the leap month, and the 5 elements lack earth, so his father called him Runtu. He can pretend to be Gong Jing, to catch small birds. I therefore look forward to the new year every day, and the new year will arrive.
闰土也就到了，好容易到了年末，有一日，母亲告诉我闰土来了，我便飞跑的去看。他正在厨房里，紫色的圆脸，头戴一顶小毡帽，颈上套一个明晃晃的银项圈，这可见他的父亲十分爱他。
Runtu has arrived. Finally, at the end of the year, one day, my mother told me that Runtu was coming, so I ran to see her. He is in the kitchen, with a round purple face, a small felt hat on his head, and a bright silver collar around his neck. This shows that his father loves him very much.
怕他死去，所以在神佛面前许下愿心，用圈子将他套住了。他见人很怕羞，只是不怕我，没有旁人的时候，便和我说话，于是不到半日，我们便熟识了。我们那时候不知道谈些什么。
Afraid of his death, he made a wish in front of gods and Buddhas and trapped him with a circle. He was very shy when meeting people, but he was not afraid of me. He would talk to me when no one else was around, and within half a day, we became familiar with each other. We didn't know what to talk about at that time.
只记得闰土很高兴，说是上城之后见了许多没有见过的东西。第2日，我便要他捕鸟。他说：“这不能，需大雪下了才好。”我们沙地上下了雪，我扫出一块空地来，用短棒支起一个大竹匾。
I just remember that Runtu was very happy, saying that after going to the city, he saw many things he had never seen before. The next day, I asked him to catch birds. He said, "This can't be done. It must snow heavily." It snowed on our sandy ground, so I cleared out a clearing and used a short stick to prop up a large bamboo plaque.
撒下鼻骨，看鸟雀来吃时，我远远地将附在棒上的绳子只一拉，那鸟雀就罩在竹匾下了。什么都有，稻鸡、角鸡、柏菇、蓝贝。我于是又很盼望下雪。闰土又对我说：“现在太冷。”
When I sow the grain and watch the birds come to eat, I just pull the rope tied to the stick from a distance, and the bird is covered under the bamboo plaque. There are everything, rice chickens, horned chickens, swans, blue-backed. So I looked forward to snowing again. Runta said to me again, "It's too cold now."
你夏天到我们这里来，我们日里到海边捡贝壳去，红的绿的都有，鬼见怕也有，观音手舞也有。晚上我和爹管西瓜去，你也去。管贼吗？不是，走路的人口渴了，摘一个瓜吃。
Come to us in the summer. We go to the beach to pick up shells during the day. There are red and green ones, there are ghosts, and there are guanin hands. My father and I will take care of the watermelon tonight, and you will go too. Do you care about thieves? No. A walker who was thirsty picked a melon and ate it.
我们这里是不算偷的，要管的是獾猪、刺猬、茶。月亮底下，你听，啦啦的响了，茶在咬瓜了。你便捏了胡叉，轻轻地走去。我那时并不知道这所谓茶的是怎么一件东西。
We don't count stealing here. The ones to take care of are badgers, pigs, hedgehogs, and harpies. Under the moon, listen, there is a crackling sound, and the eagle is biting the melon. Then you squeezed the hucha and walked gently. I didn't know what this so-called sun was at that time.
便是现在也没有知道，只是无端地觉得状如小狗而很凶猛。它不咬人吗？有胡叉呢。走到了，看见茶了，你便刺。这畜生很伶俐，倒向你奔来，反从胯下窜了。它的皮毛是油一般的滑。
Even now I don't know. I just feel like a puppy and very ferocious for no reason. Doesn't he bite? There is a harpoon. When you come and see a harpoon, you stab it. This beast is very smart. It runs towards you, but it escapes from under the crotch. His fur is as slippery as oil.
我素不知道天下有这许多新鲜事，海边有如许五色的贝壳，西瓜有这样危险的经历。我先前单知道它在水果店里出卖罢了。我们沙地里潮汛要来的时候，就有许多跳鱼儿只是跳。
I never knew that there were so many new things in the world. There were such colorful shells on the beach. Watermelons had such dangerous experiences. I only knew that he was sold in the fruit shop. In our sandy land, when the tide is coming, there are many jumping fish just jumping.
都有青蛙似的两个角啊！闰土的心里有无穷无尽的稀奇的事，都是我往常的朋友所不知道的。他们不知道一些事，闰土在海边时。
They all have two legs like frogs. Ah! There are endless strange things in Runta's heart, which are all unknown to my usual friends. They don't know some things, when Runta was at the seaside.
他们都和我一样，只看见院子里高墙上的四角的天空。可惜正月过去了，闰土须回家里去，我急得大哭，他也躲到厨房里，哭着不肯出门，但终于被他父亲带走了。
Like me, they all only saw the sky at the four corners of the high wall in the yard. Unfortunately, the first month passed and Runta had to go home. I was so anxious that I burst into tears. He also hid in the kitchen, crying and refusing to go out, but he was finally taken away by his father.
他后来还托他的父亲带给我一包贝壳和几只很好看的鸟毛，我也曾送他一两次东西，但从此没有再见面。现在我的母亲提起了他，我这儿时的记忆忽而全都闪电似的苏生过来。
He later asked his father to bring me a pack of shells and some nice bird feathers. I also gave him things once or twice, but we never met again. Now that my mother mentioned him, all my memories of my time here suddenly came to life like lightning.
似乎看到了我的美丽的故乡了。我应声说：“这好极。”他怎样？他境况也很不如意。母亲说着，便向房外看。这些人又来了，说是买木器，顺手也就随便拿走的。我得去看看。母亲站起身。
It seems that I have seen my beautiful hometown. I responded. That's great. He, how? Him. His situation is also very unsatisfactory. Mother said and looked outside the room, these people are here again. I said I was buying wooden utensils, so I just took them away. I have to go take a look. Mother stood up.
出去了。门外有几个女人的声音，我便招呼走进面前，和她闲话，问她可会写字，可愿意出门。我们坐火车去吗？我们坐火车去。船呢？先坐船。哈，这模样了，胡子这么长了。
Out. There were several women's voices outside the door. I invited Hunger to come closer and chat with him. I asked him if he could write and if he was willing to go out. Shall we go by train? Let's go by train. Where's the boat? Take the boat first, ha. It looks like this. The beard is so long.
一种尖利的怪声突然大叫起来，我吃了一下，赶忙抬起头，却见一个秃颧骨、薄嘴唇、50岁上下的女人站在我面前，两手搭在臂间，没有系裙，张着两脚。
A sharp and strange sound suddenly shouted. I was startled and quickly raised my head, only to see a woman in her 50s with protruding cheekbones and thin lips standing in front of me, her hands on her hips, no skirt on, and her feet spread wide.
正像一个画图仪器里细角伶仃的圆规。我愕然了。不认识了吗？我还抱过你咧。我愈加愕然了。幸而我的母亲也就进来，从旁说，她多年出门，统忘却了。你该记得吧，便向着我说。
Like a compass with tiny legs in a drawing instrument. I was stunned. Don't you recognize me? I even hugged you. I was even more stunned. Fortunately, my mother also came in and said from the sidelines, he has been away for many years and has forgotten all about it. You should remember, she said to me.
这是斜对门的杨二嫂，开豆腐店的。哦，我记得了。我孩子时候，在斜对门的豆腐店里，却乎终日坐着一个杨二嫂，人都叫一豆腐西施六，但是擦着白粉，颧骨没有这么高。
This is sister-in-law Yang across the door. She owns a tofu shop. Oh, I remember it. When I was a child, there was indeed a Mrs. Yang sitting in the tofu shop diagonally across the door all the time. Everyone called her Tofu Shisher. But she wore white powder and her cheekbones were not so high.
嘴唇也没有这么薄，而且终日坐着，我也从没有见过这圆规式的姿势。那时人说，因为这豆腐店的买卖非常好，但这大约因为年龄的关系，我却并未蒙着一毫感化，所以竟完全忘却了。
The lips are not that thin, and I sit all day long, and I have never seen such a compass-like posture. At that time, people said, because of this, the business of this tofu shop is very good. But probably because of my age, I wasn't influenced by it at all, so I completely forgot about it.
然而圆规很不平，显出鄙夷的神色，仿佛嗤笑法国人不知道拿破仑七，美国人不知道华盛顿八似的，冷笑说：“忘了。” 这真是贵人眼高，哪有这事？我惶恐着站起来说。那么，我对你说，迅哥。
However, the compass was very uneven, showing a look of disdain, as if mocking the French for not knowing about Napoleon and the Americans for not knowing about Washington. He sneered and said, "Forgot? This is really a noble person. Then there is such a thing, I stood up in fear and said, "Then, let me tell you. Brother Sun."
你阔了，搬动又笨重，你还要什么这些破烂木器让我拿去罢？我们小户人家用得着。我并没有阔理，我须卖了这些再去。你放了到台久了，还说不阔？你现在有3房1太太。
You are rich and it is cumbersome to move. If you want these broken wooden utensils, let me take them. Our small family needs it. I am not rich. I have to sell these, and then go. You have built a Taoist platform, and you still say it's not big enough? You now have 3 concubines.
出门便是8抬的大轿，还说不阔？下什么都瞒不过我。我知道无话可说了，便闭了口，默默地站着。真是愈有钱，便愈是1毫不肯放松；愈是1毫不肯放松，便愈有钱。
When you go out, you will see a sedan with 8 lifts. How can you say it is not rich? Scared, nothing can be hidden from me. I knew I had nothing to say, so I shut up and stood silently. The richer I am, the more I refuse to relax. The more I refuse to relax, the richer you become.
圆规一面愤愤地回转身，一面絮絮地说，慢慢向外走，顺便将我母亲的一副手套塞在裤腰里，出去了。此后又有近处的本家和亲戚来访问我，我一面应酬，偷空便收拾些行李。
Companion turned around angrily, said something coquettishly, walked out slowly, stuffed a pair of my mother's gloves into the waistband of his trousers, and went out. After that, my family and relatives from nearby came to visit me. While I was socializing, I took some time to pack some luggage.
这样的过了3、4天，一日是天气很冷的午后，我吃过午饭，坐着喝茶，觉得外面有人进来了，便回头去看。我看时，不由得非常出惊，慌忙站起身，迎着走去。这来的便是闰土。
This went on for 3 or 4 days. One day it was a very cold afternoon. After lunch, I was sitting drinking tea. I felt someone came in outside, so I turned back to look. When I saw it, I couldn't help but be very frightened. I stood up in a hurry and walked towards it. This is Runtu.
虽然我一见便知道是闰土，但又不是我这记忆上的闰土了。他身材增加了1倍，先前的紫色的圆脸已经变作灰黄，而且加上了很深的皱纹，眼睛也像他父亲一样，周围都肿得通红。
Although I knew it was Runtu as soon as I saw it, it was not the Runtu in my memory. His body had doubled in size, his previously round purple face had turned sallow and had deep wrinkles, his eyes were swollen and red like his father's.
这我知道，在海边种地的人，终日吹着海风，大抵是这样的。他头上是一顶破毡帽，身上只一件极薄的棉衣，浑身瑟索着，手里提着一个纸包和一支长烟管。
I know that this is generally the case for people who farm by the sea and are exposed to the sea breeze all day long. He wore a broken felt hat on his head, and only a very thin cotton coat on his body, which was wrapped around his body. He was holding a paper bag and a long pipe in his hand.
那手也不是我所记得的红活原石的手，却又粗又笨，而且开裂，像是松树皮了。我这时很兴奋，但不知道怎么说才好，只是说：“啊，闰土哥，你来了。”我接着便有许多话。
The hand was not the red and round hand I remembered, but it was thick, clumsy, and cracked, like pine bark. I was very excited at this time, but I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "Ah, Brother Runtu, you are here?" I then had a lot to say.
想要连珠一般涌出，脚击、跳鱼、贝壳、茶，但又总觉得被什么挡着似的，单在脑里面回旋，吐不出口外去。他站住了，脸上现出欢喜和凄凉的神情，动着嘴唇，却没有作声。
I want to pour out words like a string of words, horned chicken, jumping fish, shells, quail, etc. But I always feel like I am being blocked by something, just spinning in my head and unable to spit it out. He stood still, with a look of joy and desolation on his face. He moved his lips but made no sound.
他的态度终于恭敬起来了，分明地叫道：“老爷。”我似乎打了一个寒噤，我就知道我们之间已经隔了一层可悲的厚障壁了。我也说不出话。他回过头去说：“水生给老爷磕头。”
His attitude finally became respectful, and he shouted clearly, "Sir." I seemed to shudder. I knew that there was already a pathetically thick barrier between us. I was also speechless. He turned around and said, "Shui Sheng, kowtow to the master."
便拖出躲在背后的孩子来。这正是一个年前的闰土，只是黄瘦些，梗子上没有银圈罢了。这是第5个孩子，没有见过世面，躲躲闪闪。母亲和猴下楼来了，他们大约也听到了声音。
Then he dragged out the child hiding behind him. This was exactly the same Runtu from 20 years ago, but he was thinner and had no silver ring around his neck. This is the 5th child. He has never seen the world, and he is hiding and hiding. The mother and Hunger came downstairs, and they probably heard the sound.
老太太，信是早收到了，我实在喜欢的不得了。知道老爷回来，闰土说：“啊，你怎地这样客气起来？你们先前不是哥弟称呼吗？还是照旧训个儿？”母亲高兴地说：“啊呀，老太太真是，这成什么规矩？”
Old lady. The letter was received early. I really like him very much. When I know that the master is back. Runta said. "Ah, why are you so polite? Didn't you call me brother before?" "Still the same, brother Sun." My mother said happily. "Ah, the old lady is really, what kind of rule is this?"
那时是孩子，不懂事，闰土说着，又叫水生上来打拱，那孩子却害羞，紧紧地只贴在他背后。他就是水生。第5个，都是生人，怕生也难怪的，还是红儿和他去走走。母亲说。红儿听的这话。
I was a child at that time and was ignorant. Runta said, and asked Shuishing to come up and do some arching, but the child was shy and clung to his back. "Is he Shuishing?" I was a child at that time and was ignorant. Runta said, and asked Shuishing to come up and do some arching, but the child was shy and clung to his back. "Is he Shuishing?" The 5th one? They are all strangers, so it is no wonder that they are afraid of them. Hunger should go for a walk with him. Mother said. Hunger heard this.
便来招水生， 水生却松松爽爽同他一路出去了。母亲叫闰土坐，他迟疑了一回，终于就了坐，将长烟管靠在桌旁，递过纸包来，说：“冬天没有什么东西了。这一点干青豆倒是自家晒在那里的。”
Then he came to recruit Shui Sheng, but Shui Sheng went out with him happily. His mother asked Runtu to sit down. He hesitated for a while, then finally sat down, leaned the long pipe against the table, handed over the paper bag, and said, "There is nothing much in winter. I can dry the dried green beans at home. There."
请老爷，我问问他的景况。他只是摇头，非常难。第6个孩子也会帮忙了，却总是吃不够，又不太平，什么地方都要钱，没有规定，收成又坏。种出东西来，挑去卖，总要捐几回钱，折了本。
Please, sir, I asked him about his situation. He just shook his head. It's very difficult. The 6th child also helps, but there is always not enough food, and there is no peace, everything requires money, there are no regulations, and the harvest is bad. When you grow something and sell it, you always have to donate money several times and lose the money.
不去卖，又只能烂掉。他只是摇头，脸上虽然刻着许多皱纹，却全然不动，仿佛石像一般。他大约只是觉得苦，却又形容不出，沉默了片时，便拿起烟管来，默默地吸烟了。母亲问他
If you don't sell it, it will just rot. He just shook his head. Although there were many wrinkles on his face, it was completely motionless, like a stone statue. He probably just felt bitter, but he couldn't describe it, and he was silent for a while. Then, he picked up the pipe and started smoking silently. His mother asked him,
知道他的家里事务忙，明天便得回去，又没有吃过午饭，便叫他自己到厨下炒饭吃去。他出去了，母亲和我都叹息他的境况，多子、饥荒、瞌睡、兵、匪、官、身，都苦得他像一个木偶人了。
Knowing that his family was busy with affairs and he would have to go back tomorrow, and he hadn't had lunch yet, he asked him to go to the kitchen and eat fried rice. He went out. My mother and I both lamented his situation, many children, famine, heavy taxes, soldiers, bandits, officials, and gentry, all of which made him look like a puppet.
母亲对我说，凡是不必搬走的东西，尽可以送他，可以听他自己去拣择。下午，他捡好了几件东西，2条长桌，4个椅子，1副香炉和烛台，1杆台秤。他又要所有的草灰。
My mother told me that anything that does not need to be moved can be given to him and he can choose for himself. In the afternoon, he picked up several things, 2 long tables, 4 chairs, a pair of incense burners and candlesticks, and a lifting scale. He wants all the ashes again.
我们这里煮饭是烧稻草的，那灰可以做沙地的肥料。待我们启程的时候，他用船来载去。夜间，我们又谈些闲天，都是无关紧要的话。第2天早晨，他就领了水生回去了。
We cook rice here by burning straw, and the ashes can be used as fertilizer for the sand. When we set off, he used the boat to carry us there. During the night, we talked some more, all of which were insignificant. The next morning, he took Shui Sheng back.
又过了9日，是我们启程的日期。闰土早晨便到了，水生没有同来，却只带着一个5岁的女儿管船只。我们终日很忙碌，再没有谈天的功夫。来客也不少，有送行的，有拿东西的。
Another 9 days passed and it was our departure date. Runtu arrived in the morning. Shuaisheng did not come with him, but he only took his 5-year-old daughter to take charge of the boat. We are busy all day long and have no time to chat. There were also many visitors, some seeing off and some picking up things.
有送行间拿东西的。待到傍晚我们上船的时候，这老屋里的所有破旧大小粗细东西已经一扫而空了。我们的船向前走，两岸的青山在黄昏中都装成了深带颜色。
There are people who see you off and pick up things at the same time. By the time we got on the boat in the evening, all the shabby, large and small things in the old house had been swept away. As our boat moved forward, the green mountains on both sides of the bank turned into a deep dark color in the dusk.
连着退向船后捎去，红儿和我靠着船窗，同看外面模糊的风景。他忽然问道：“大伯，我们什么时候回来？”“回来？你怎么还没有走就想回来了？”“可是水生约我到他家玩去了。”
Continuously retreat to the stern of the boat. Hunger and I were leaning against the boat window, looking at the blurry scenery outside. He suddenly asked, "Uncle, when will we come back?" "Come back? Why do you want to come back before you leave?" But Shuaisheng invited me to play at his house.
他睁着大的黑眼睛，痴痴地想。我和母亲也都有些惘然，于是又提起闰土来。母亲说：“那豆腐西施的杨二嫂，自从我家收拾行李以来，本是每日必到的，前天依在灰堆里。”
He opened his big black eyes and thought dreamily. My mother and I were also a little confused, so we brought up Runtu again. Mother said that the lovely sister-in-law Yang, who had been visiting our house every day since packing her luggage, was found in the ashes the day before yesterday.
掏出10多个碗碟来，议论之后，便定说是闰土埋着的，他可以在运灰的时候一起搬回家里去。杨二嫂发现了这件事，自己很以为功，便拿了那狗气沙，这是我们这里养鸡的器具。
They took out more than a dozen dishes and after discussing it, they decided that Runta had buried them. He could move them back home together when the ashes were being transported. When Urseo Yang found out about this, she took great credit for it. So he took the dog and killed it. This is the equipment we use to raise chickens here.
木盘上面有着栅栏，内盛食料，鸡可以伸进梗子去啄，狗却不能，只能看着气死，飞也似的跑了。亏一装着这么高低的小脚，竟跑得这样快。老屋里我遇远了。
There was a fence on the wooden plate, which contained food. The chickens could reach in and peck, but the dogs couldn't. They could only watch and get angry. He ran away as fast as he could. Thanks to his small feet, he could run like this. Quick. The old house is getting farther and farther away from me.
故乡的山水也都渐渐远离了我，但我却并不感到怎样的留恋。我只觉得我四面有看不见的高墙，将我隔成孤身，使我非常气闷。那西瓜地上的银项圈的小英雄的影像，我本来十分清楚。
The mountains and rivers of my hometown are gradually moving away from me, but I don't feel any nostalgia. I just felt that there were invisible high walls around me, which isolated me and made me very depressed. The image of the little hero with the silver collar on the watermelon field was very clear to me.
现在却忽地模糊了，又使我非常的悲哀。母亲和猴儿都睡着了，我躺着听船底潺潺的水声，知道我在走我的路。我想，我竟与闰土隔绝到这地步了，但我们的后辈还是遗弃。
Now it suddenly becomes blurry, which makes me very sad. Mother and Hunger both fell asleep. I lay down and listened to the gurgling sound of water under the boat, knowing that I was walking my way. I thought, I am so isolated from Runtu, but our descendants are still the same.
红儿不是正在想念水声吗？我希望他们不再像我，又大家隔膜起来。然而，我又不愿意他们因为要一气都如我的辛苦辗转而生活，也不愿意他们都如闰土的辛苦麻木而生活。
Isn't hunger missing Shui Sheng? I hope that they will no longer be like me and become estranged from each other. However, I don't want them to live like my hard work just because they want to be the same, nor do I want them to live like Runta's hard work and be numb.
也不愿意都如别人的辛苦自虽而生活。他们应该有新的生活，为我们所未经生活过的。我想到希望，忽然害怕起来了。闰土要香炉和烛台的时候。
I don't want to live in vain like other people's hard work. They should have a new life, one that we have not lived. I thought of hope and suddenly became afraid. When Runta asked for the incense burner and candlestick.
我还按星号击废星号，以为他总是崇拜偶像，什么时候都不忘却。现在我所谓希望，不也是我自己手制的偶像吗？只是他的愿望切近，我的愿望茫远罢了。我在朦胧中。
I also secretly thought that he always worshipped idols and never forgot them. Now what I call hope isn't it also an idol made by myself? It's just that his wish is close, while my wish is far away. I am in a haze.
眼前展开一片海边碧绿的沙地来，上面深蓝的天空中挂着一轮金黄的圆月。我想，希望本是无所谓有，无所谓无的。这正如地上的路，其实地上本没有路，走的人多了，也变成了路。
A piece of green sand by the sea spread out in front of you, with a golden full moon hanging in the deep blue sky above. I think, hope does not matter whether it exists or not. This is just like the road on the earth. In fact, there is no road on the earth, but when more people walk on it, it becomes a road.
1921年1月，6社系，我在倒数上去的20年中，只看过2回中国戏，前10年是绝不看，因为没有看戏的意思和机会，那2回全在后10年，然而都没有看出什么来就走了。
January 1921. 6. Social opera. In the last 20 years, I have only watched Chinese opera twice. In the first 10 years, I would never watch it because I had no intention or opportunity to watch the opera. Those 2 times came later. 10 years later, he left without seeing anything.
第一回是民国元年，我初到北京的时候，当时一个朋友对我说：“北京戏最好，你不去见见世面吗？”我想，看戏是有味的，何况在北京呢？于是都兴致勃勃地跑到什么园，戏文已经开场了。
The first time was when I first arrived in Beijing in the first year of the Republic of China. A friend said to me that Beijing opera is the best. Why don't you go and see the world? I think going to the theater is fun, especially in Beijing. So they all ran to the garden happily, and the play had already begun.
在外面也早听到咚咚的响，我们挨进门，几个红的绿的在我的眼前一闪烁，便又看见戏台下满是许多头，在定神四面看，却见中间也还有几个空座，挤过去要坐时，又有人对我发议论。
I also heard the sound of winter outside. We walked in, and several red and green ones flashed in front of my eyes, and then I saw many heads under the stage. Then I looked around carefully, and saw that there were still a few empty seats in the middle. When I squeezed past to sit down, another someone commented on me.
我因为耳朵已经黄黄的想着了，用了心，才听到他是说有人不行。我们退到后面，一个辫子很光的却来领我们到了侧面，指出一个地位来。这所谓地位者，原来是一条长凳。
Because my ears were already ringing, I tried my best to hear him say, "There is someone, no." We retreated to the back, and a man with very smooth braids came to lead us to the side and pointed out a position. This so-called status person turns out to be a bench.
然而他那坐板比我的上腿要狭到3/4，他的脚比我的下腿要长过2/3。我先是没有爬上去的勇气，接着便联想到私刑拷打的刑具，不由得毛骨悚然地走出了。
However, his seat is 3/4 narrower than my upper legs, and his feet are more than 2/3 longer than my lower legs. I didn't have the courage to climb up at first, and then I thought of the torture tools of lynching, and I couldn't help but walk out in horror.
走了许多路，忽听得我的朋友的声音道：“究竟怎的？”我回过脸去，原来他也被我带出来了。他很诧异地说：“怎么总是走，不答应？”我说：“朋友，对不起，我耳朵只在东东晃晃地响。”
After walking for a long time, I suddenly heard my friend's voice saying, "What happened?" I turned around, and it turned out that he had also been brought out by me. He was very surprised and said, "Why do you always leave and refuse to agree?" I said, "Friend, I'm sorry, my ears are only ringing in winter."
并没有听到你的话。后来我每一想到，便很以为奇怪，似乎这戏太不好，否则便是我近来在戏台下不适于生存了。第二回忘记了那一年。
Didn't hear you. Every time I thought about it later, I felt very strange. It seemed that the play was too bad, otherwise it would be that I was not suitable for living off the stage recently. I forgot that year for the second time.
总之是目击湖北水灾，捐儿谈教天2还没有死。捐法是2元钱买一张戏票，可以到第一舞台去看戏，扮演的多是名角，其一就是小教天。我买了一张票，本是对于劝募人聊以色泽的。
In short, it was to collect donations for the Hubei flood disaster, and Tan Jingtian, too, was not dead yet. The way to donate is to buy a theater ticket with 2 yuan, and you can go to the first stage to watch the theater. In short, it was to collect donations for the Hubei flood disaster, and Tan Jingtian, too, was not dead yet. The way to donate is to buy a theater ticket with 2 yuan, and you can go to the first stage to watch the theater. Most of the actors are famous actors, one of which is Xiao Jingtian.
然而，似乎又有好事家乘机对我说了些叫天不可不看的大法要了。我于是忘了前几年的东东惶惶之灾，竟到第一舞台去了。但大约一半也因为重价购来的保票，总得使用了才舒服。
However, it seems that some good people took the opportunity to tell me some dafa that God must not ignore. So I forgot about the disaster of winter in previous years and went to the first stage, but about half of it was because I bought the tickets at a high price and had to use them to feel comfortable.
我打听的教天出台是迟的，而第一舞台却是新式构造，用不着争座位，便放了心，延宕到9点钟才去。谁料照例人都满了，连立足也难。我只得挤在远处的人丛中看一个老旦在台上唱。
I inquired that it was too late for the stage to be announced, but the first stage had a new structure. There was no need to compete for seats, so I felt relieved and postponed my visit until 9 o'clock. Unexpectedly, as usual, everyone was full, and it was difficult to even stand. I had to squeeze in the crowd in the distance to watch an old lady singing on the stage.
那老旦嘴边插着2个点火的纸捻子，旁边有一个鬼卒，我费尽思量才疑心他或者是木莲3的母亲，因为后来又出来了一个和尚。然而我又不知道那名角是谁。
The old lady had 2 igniting paper twisters stuck in her mouth, and there was a ghost soldier next to her. It took me a lot of thinking before I suspected that he might be Mullian's mother, because later a monk came out. But I don't know who the famous actor is.
就去问及小在我的左边的一位胖绅士，他很看不起似的斜瞥了我一眼，说道：“公允府4。”我身盔浅露，而且粗疏，脸上一热，同时脑里也掷出了绝不再问的定章，于是看小旦唱。
I asked the fat gentleman squeezed to my left. He glanced at me sideways as if he was looking down on him and said, Gong Yun Fu, 4. I felt ashamed of being shallow and careless, and my face felt hot. At the same time, I made a decision in my mind to never ask again, so I looked at Xiao Dan sings.
看花旦唱，看老生唱，看不知什么角色唱，看一大班人乱打，看2、3个人互打，从9点多到10点，从10点到11点，从11点到11点半，从11点半到12点，然而叫天竟还没有来。
Watch Hua Dan singing, watch old students singing, watch unknown characters singing, watch a large group of people fighting randomly, watch 2 or 3 people fighting each other, from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, from 11 o'clock to 11 at 11:30, from 11:30 to 12 o'clock, yet the call to heaven has not come yet.
我向来没有这样忍耐地等待过什么事物，何况这身边的胖绅士的嘘嘘的喘气，这台上的东东黄黄的敲打，红红绿绿的晃荡，加之已12点，忽而使我醒悟到，在这里不适于生存了。
I have never waited for anything so patiently, and the heavy breathing of the fat gentleman next to me, the whistling sound of winter on the stage, the swaying of red and green colors, plus 12 o'clock, suddenly made me realize it's no longer suitable to live here.
我同时便机械地拧转身子，用力往外掷一击，觉得背后便已满满的。大约那弹性的胖绅士早在我的空处胖开了他的右半身了。我后无回路，自然挤而又挤，终于出了大门。
At the same time, I mechanically turned around and squeezed out. I felt that the back was already full. The elastic fat gentleman must have spread his right half in my empty space. There was no way back for me, so I naturally squeezed and squeezed again and again, and finally got out of the gate.
街上除了专等看客的车辆之外，几乎没有什么行人了。大门口却还有10几个人昂着头看戏目，别有一堆人站着并不看什么。我想，他们大概是看散戏之后出来的女人们的。
Except for the cars waiting for spectators, there were almost no pedestrians on the street. However, there were more than a dozen people watching the show with their heads held high at the gate. There were also a bunch of people standing not watching anything. I thought they were probably watching of the women who came out after the show.
而叫天却还没有来，然而夜气很清爽，真所谓沁人心脾。我在北京遇着这样的好空气，仿佛这是第一遭了。这一夜，就是我对于中国戏告了别的一夜，此后再没有想到它。
But the sky has not come yet. However, the night air is very refreshing, which is really called refreshing. It seems that this is the first time I have encountered such good air in Beijing. This night was the night I said goodbye to Chinese opera, and I never thought of him again.
即使偶尔经过戏园，我们也莫不相关，精神上早已移在天之南，移在地之北了。但是前几天， 我忽在无意之中看到一本日本文的书，可惜忘记了书名和著者，总之是关于中国系的。
Even if we occasionally pass by the theater, we are indifferent. Mentally, we are already in the south of the sky and in the north of the earth. But a few days ago, I accidentally saw a Japanese book. Unfortunately, I forgot the title and author. In short, it was about Chinese opera.
其中有一篇，大意仿佛说，中国戏是大敲、大叫、大跳，使看客头昏脑眩，很不适于剧场。但若在野外散漫的所在，远远的看起来也自有它的风致。
One of the articles seems to say that Chinese opera involves loud banging, shouting, and jumping, which makes the audience dizzy. It is not suitable for theaters, but if it is in a loose place in the wild, it will look different from a distance. Of style.
我当时觉着，这正是说了在我意中而未曾想到的话，因为我却记得在野外看过很好的戏，到北京以后的连进2回戏园去，也许还是受了那时的影响力。可惜我不知道怎么一来。
I felt at the time that this was exactly what I had said but had not thought of, because I did remember watching a very good play in the wild. I felt at the time that this was exactly what I had said but had not thought of, because I did remember watching a very good play in the wild. After arriving in Beijing, I went to the theater twice in a row. Maybe I was influenced by the atmosphere at that time. Impact. It's a pity that I don't know how to do it.
竟将书名忘却了。至于我看好戏的时候，却实在已经是远在遥遥的了。其实恐怕我还不过11、12岁。我们鲁镇的习惯，本来是凡有出嫁的女儿，倘自己还未当家。
I actually forgot the title of the book. As for when I watched a good show, it was actually far away. I was probably only 11 or 12 years old at that time. Our custom in Luzhen is that if a married daughter is not yet the head of the family,
夏间便大抵回到母家去消夏。那时我的祖母虽然还康健，但母亲也已分担了些家务，所以夏期便不能多日的归省了，只得在扫墓完毕之后抽空去住几天。
In the summer, I usually go back to my mother's house to spend the summer. Although my grandmother was still healthy at that time, my mother had already shared some of the housework, so she could not go back to the province for many days during the summer period. I had to take time to stay for a few days after sweeping the tomb.
这时我便每年跟了我的母亲住在外祖母的家里。那地方叫平桥村，是一个离海边不远、极偏僻的临河的小村庄，住户不满30家，都种田、打鱼，只有一家很小的杂货店。但在我是乐土。
At this time, I stayed with my mother at my grandmother's house every year. That place is called Pingxiao Village. It is a very remote village near the river not far from the sea. There are less than 30 households, all of them farm and fish, and there is only one small grocery store. But in my promised land.
因为我在这里不但得到优待，又可以免念志志思干，悠悠南山了。和我一同玩的是许多小朋友，因为有了远客，他们也都从父母那里得了减少工作的许可，伴我来游戏。
Because not only do I get preferential treatment here, but I can also avoid saying Zitsizigan Yu Yunanshan 5. There were many children playing with me. Because of the distant visitors, they all got permission from their parents to reduce their work and accompany me to play.
在小村里，一家的课几乎也就是公共的。我们年纪都相仿，但论起行辈12来，却至少是叔子，有几个还是太公，因为他们和村都同姓，是本家。然而我们是朋友，即使偶尔吵闹起来，
In a small village, the guests of one family are almost the same as those of the public. We are all of the same age, but in terms of seniority, we are at least uncles, and some of us are also grandfathers, because they all have the same surname in the whole village and belong to the same family. However, we are friends, even if we occasionally argue.
打了太公，一村的老老少少也绝没有一个会想出饭上这2个字来，而他们也99%不识字。我们每天的事情大概是掘蚯蚓，掘来穿在铜丝做的小钩上，浮在河沿上去钓虾。
After beating the grandfather, no one in the village, old or young, would be able to think of the word offender, and 99% of them were illiterate. What we do every day is probably to dig up earthworms, put them on small hooks made of copper wire, and then lie down on the river bank to catch shrimps.
虾是水世界里的呆子，绝不但用了自己的2个钱捧着钩尖送到嘴里去的，所以不半天便可以钓到一大碗。这虾照例是归我吃的，其次便是一同去放牛。
Shrimps are idiots in the water world. They are not afraid to use their 2 pincers to hold the tip of the hook and bring it to their mouth, so they can catch a big bowl in less than half a day. As usual, this shrimp belongs to me. The second step is to go herding cattle together.
但或者因为高等动物了的缘故罢，黄牛水牛都欺生，敢于欺侮我，因此我也总不敢走近身，只好远远地跟着站着。这时候，小朋友们便不再原谅我会读制止丝干，却全都嘲笑起来了。
But perhaps because they are higher animals, oxen and buffaloes are bullies and dare to bully me, so I never dared to get close, so I had to follow them and stand at a distance. At this time, the children no longer forgave me for knowing how to read Sitsizigan, but they all laughed at me.
至于我在那里所第一盼望的，却再到赵庄去看戏。赵庄是离平桥村5里的较大的村庄，平桥村太小，自己演不起戏，每年总付给赵庄多少钱，算作合作的。
As for what I was most looking forward to there, it was going to Zhaozhuang to see the theater. Zhaozhuang is a larger village 5 miles away from Pingxiao village. Pingxiao village is too small to be able to act on its own, so the total amount paid to Zhaozhuang every year is counted as a joint venture.
当时我并不想到他们为什么年年要演戏，现在想，那或者是春赛，是社戏6了。就在我11、12岁时候的这一年，这日期也看看等到了。不料这一年真可惜，在早上就叫不到船。
At the time, I didn't think about why they had to act every year. Now I think about it, maybe it was the spring competition or a social opera. 6. In this year when I was 11 or 12 years old, I had been waiting for this date. Unexpectedly, this year it was a pity that the boat could not be called in the morning.
平桥村只有一只早出晚归的航船是大船，绝没有留用的道理。其余的都是小船，不合用。央人到邻村去问，也没有，早都给别人定下了。外祖母很气恼，怪家里的人不早定，絮叨起来。
There is only one large ship in Pingxiao village that leaves early and returns late. There is absolutely no reason to keep it. The rest were all small boats and were not suitable for use. I went to neighboring villages to ask, but there were no boats. There is only one large ship in Pingxiao village that leaves early and returns late. There is absolutely no reason to keep it. The rest were all small boats and were not suitable for use. I went to neighboring villages to ask, but there were no boats. They had already been booked for others. Grandma was very angry and blamed the family for not deciding in advance, so she started nagging.
母亲便宽慰一， 说我们鲁镇的戏比小村里的好得多，一年看几回，今天就算了。只有我急得要哭，母亲却竭力地嘱咐我，说万不能装模装样，怕又招外祖母生气，又不准和别人一同去。
My mother comforted E and said that the operas in Lu Town were much better than those in small villages. We should watch them a few times a year and forget about it today. I was the only one who was so anxious that I almost cried, but my mother tried her best to tell me not to show off, for fear of making Grandma angry again, and she was not allowed to go with others.
说是怕外祖母要担心，总之是完了。到下午，我的朋友都去了，戏已经开场了。我似乎听到锣鼓的声音，而且知道他们在戏台下买豆浆喝。这一天我不钓虾，东西也少吃。
He said he was afraid that Grandma would be worried. In short, it's over. By the afternoon, all my friends were there, and the play had already started. I seemed to hear the sound of gongs and drums, and knew that they were buying soy milk under the stage. I won't fish for shrimps on this day, and they'll eat less.
母亲很为难，没有法子想。到晚饭时候，外祖母也终于觉察了，并且说我应当不高兴，他们太怠慢，是待客的礼数里从来没有的。吃饭之后，看过戏的少年们也都聚拢来了。
The mother was very embarrassed and had no idea. By dinner time, my grandmother finally noticed it and said that I should be unhappy. They were too negligent and had no etiquette in hospitality. After dinner, the teenagers who had watched the theater also gathered around.
高高兴兴地来讲戏，只有我不开口，他们都叹息，而且表同情。忽然间，一个最聪明的双喜大悟似的提议了，他说：“大船，巴叔的航船不是回来了吗？”十几个别的少年也大悟，立刻撺掇起来。
Come and tell the drama happily. Only I remained silent. They all sighed and expressed sympathy. Suddenly, one of the smartest people, Shuangxi, made a suggestion as if he had an enlightenment. He said, "Big ship. Isn't the eighth uncle's ship back?" A dozen other teenagers also had this enlightenment and immediately started to stir up excitement.
说可以坐了这航船和我一同去，我高兴了。然而外祖母又怕都是孩子不可靠，母亲又说是若叫大人一同去，他们白天全有工作，要他熬夜是不合情理的。在这迟疑之中，
He said he could take this ship and go with me. I'm happy. However, the grandmother was afraid that they were just children and would not be reliable. The mother also said that if the adults were asked to go with them, they would all have jobs during the day and it would be unreasonable to ask him to stay up late. In this hesitation,
双喜可又看出底细来了，便有大声地说道：“我写包票，船又大，迅哥向来不乱跑，我们又都是识水性的。诚然，这10多个少年，委实没有一个不会浮水的，而且2、3个还是弄潮的好手。”
Shuangxi could see the truth again, and said loudly, "I guarantee it. The boat is big, Brother Sun never runs around, and we all know the water. It's true. Of the dozen or so young men, none of them knew how to swim, and 2 or 3 were good at it."
外祖母和母亲也相信，便不再驳回，都微笑了。我们立刻一哄地出了门。我的很重的心忽而轻松了，身体也似乎舒展到说不出的大。一出门，
Grandma and mother also believed it, so they no longer dismissed it and both smiled. We immediately rushed out of the door. My heavy heart suddenly relaxed, and my body seemed to stretch to an indescribably large size. As soon as you go out.
便望见月下的平桥内泊着一只白篷的航船，大家跳下船，双喜拔前高，阿发拔后高，年幼的都陪我坐在舱中，较大的聚在船尾。母亲送出来吩咐要小心的时候，我们已经点开船。
Then I saw a white-covered ship moored in Pingxiao under the moon. Everyone jumped out of the ship and jumped in front for double happiness. The younger ones sat with me in the cabin, and the older ones gathered at the stern. When Mother sent out the instructions to be careful, we had already started the boat.
在桥石上一磕，退后几尺，即又上前出了桥。于是架起两只橹，一只两人，一里一换，有说笑的，有嚷的，夹着潺潺的船头积水的声音，在左右都是碧绿的豆麦田地的河流中。
He knocked on the bridge stone, stepped back a few feet, and then stepped forward again to exit the bridge. So we set up 2 oars, one with 2 people each, and they were joking and shouting, along with the sound of the gurgling water from the bow of the boat, in the river with green beans and wheat fields on the left and right.
非一般景象照装前进了，两岸的豆麦和河底的水草所发散出来的清香，夹杂在水汽中扑面的吹来，月色便朦胧在这水汽里。淡黑的起伏的连山，仿佛是踊跃的铁的兽脊似的。
He flew straight towards Xiaozhuang. The fragrance emanating from the beans and wheat on both sides of the river and the water plants at the bottom of the river was mixed with the water vapor and blew towards our faces. The moonlight was dimly reflected in the water vapor. The light black undulating mountains looked like the backbone of an active iron beast.
都远远地向船尾跑去了，但我却还以为船慢。他们换了4回手，见望见依稀的照装，而且似乎听到歌吹了，还有几点火，料想便是戏台，但或者也许是渔火。那声音大概是横笛婉转。
They all ran far away to the stern of the boat, but I thought the boat was slow. They changed hands 4 times, and gradually saw Xiaozhuang vaguely, and seemed to hear a song playing, and there was a few fires. They expected it to be the stage, but maybe it was fishing fires. That sound was probably that of a transverse flute, reverberating.
悠扬使我的心也沉静，然而又自失起来，觉得要和它弥散在含着豆麦韵枣之香的夜气里。那火接近了，果然是渔火，我才记得先前望见的也不是照装，那是正对船头的一丛松柏林。
The melodiousness made my heart calm, but I felt lost in myself. I felt like I wanted to be with him in the night air that contained the fragrance of beans, wheat, and algae. The fire was approaching, and it turned out to be a fishing fire. Only then did I remember that the one I saw earlier was not Xiaozhuang either. It was a pine forest directly opposite the bow of the ship. The melodiousness made my heart calm, but I felt lost in myself. I felt like I wanted to be with him in the night air that contained the fragrance of beans, wheat, and algae. The fire was approaching, and it turned out to be a fishing fire. Only then did I remember that the one I saw earlier was not Xiaozhuang either. It was a pine forest directly opposite the bow of the ship.
我去年也曾经去游玩过，还看见破的石马倒在地下，一个石羊蹲在草里呢。过了那林，船便弯进了叉港，于是赵庄便真在眼前了。最惹眼的是屹立在庄外临河的空地上的一座戏台。
I went there last year and saw a broken stone horse lying on the ground and a stone sheep squatting in the grass. After passing the forest, the boat turned into Cha Harbor, and Xiaozhuang was really in front of us. The most eye-catching thing is a stage standing in the open space facing the river outside the village.
模糊在远处的月夜中，和空间几乎分不出界限。我疑心画上见过的仙境， 就在这里出现了。这时船走得更快，不多时，在台上显出人物来，红红绿绿的洞。
The model is in the moonlit night in the distance, almost indistinguishable from space. I suspect that the fairyland I have seen in the painting appears here. At this time, the boat moved faster, and after a while, figures appeared on the stage, moving red and green.
近台的河里一望乌黑的是看戏的人家的船棚，近台没有什么空了，我们远远的看罢。阿发说：“这是船慢了，不久就到。”果然进不得台旁，大家只能下了高，比那正对戏台的神棚还要远。
The dark things in the river near the stage are the boat awnings of theatergoers. There is nothing empty near the stage. Let's watch from a distance. Alpha said. The boat was slowing down at this time, and it arrived soon. As expected, it couldn't get close to the stage, so everyone could only get off the boat. The dark things in the river near the stage are the boat awnings of theatergoers. There is nothing empty near the stage. Let's watch from a distance. Alpha said. The boat was slowing down at this time, and it arrived soon. As expected, it couldn't get close to the stage, so everyone could only get off the boat, which was further away than the sacred shed directly opposite the stage.
其实我们这白棚的航船，本也不愿意和乌棚的船在一处，而况并没有空地呢。在停船的匆忙中，看见台上有一个黑的长胡子的背上插着4张旗，捏着长枪，和一群赤膊的人正打仗。
In fact, our ship with a white awning did not want to be in the same place as the ship with a black awning, and there was no open space. In the rush to stop the ship, I saw a black man with a long beard on the platform with a tattoo on his back. 4 flags, holding spears, and a group of shirtless people are fighting.
双喜说，那就是有名的铁头老生，能连翻84个筋斗。他日里亲自数过的，我们便都挤在船头上看打仗，但那铁头老生却又并不翻筋斗，只有几个赤膊的人翻了一阵，都进去了。
Shuangxi said that it was the famous Taitu Laosheng, who could do 84 somersaults in a row, and he had counted them himself. We all crowded on the bow to watch the battle, but the old man with the iron head didn't do somersaults. Only a few shirtless people did somersaults. After a while, they all got in.
接着走出一个小旦来，咿咿呀呀地唱。双喜说，晚上看客少，铁头老生也谢了，谁肯显本领给白的看呢？我相信这话对，因为其实台下已经不很有人，乡下人为了明天的工作熬不得夜。
Then a xiaodan came out and sang babblingly. Shuangxi said, there are not many people watching at night, and the old man Taitu is slacking off. Who is willing to show off his skills to buy D? I believe this is right, because there were not many people in the audience at that time, and the country people couldn't bear it for tomorrow's work. Night.
早都睡觉去了，疏疏朗朗的站着的不过是几10个本村和邻村的闲汉。乌篷船里的那些土财主的家眷固然在，然而他们也不在乎看戏，多半是专到戏台下来吃糕饼、水果和瓜子的。
Everyone has gone to bed long ago, and the only people standing around are dozens of idle people from this village and neighboring villages. Although the families of the rich people in the awning boat were there, they didn't care about watching the show. Most of them came to the stage to eat cakes, fruits and melon seeds.
所以简直可以算白地。然而我的意思却也并不在乎看翻筋斗。我最愿意看的是一个人蒙了白布，两手在头上捧着一只棒似的蛇头的蛇精，其次是套了黄布衣跳老虎。
So it can be considered as nothing. However, I don't really care about watching somersaults. What I most like to see is so it can be considered as nothing. However, I don't really care about watching somersaults. What I most like to see is a snake spirit covered with a white cloth, holding a stick-like snake head on his head in both hands, followed by a jumping tiger wearing a yellow cloth.
但是等了许多时都不见，小蛋虽然进去了，立刻又出来了一个很老的小生。我有些疲倦了，托桂生买豆浆去。他去了一刻，回来说没有。卖豆浆的聋子也回去了。日里倒有，我还喝了2碗呢。
But after waiting for a long time, no one was seen. Although Xiaodan went in, a very old student came out immediately. I was a little tired and asked Guisheng to buy soy milk. He left for a moment and came back and said, no. The deaf man selling soy milk also went back. There was some during the day, and I even drank 2 bowls.
现在去舀一瓢水来给你喝吧。我不喝水，支撑着仍然看，也说不出见了些什么，只觉得戏子的脸都渐渐的有些稀奇了，那五官渐不明显，似乎融成一片的，再没有什么高低。
Now go and get a ladle of water for you to drink. I didn't drink water, but I kept looking. I couldn't tell what I saw. Now go and get a ladle of water for you to drink. I didn't drink water, but I kept looking. I couldn't tell what I saw.
年纪小的几个多打呵欠了，大的也各管自己谈话。忽而一个红衫的小丑被绑在台柱子上，给一个花白胡子的用马鞭打起来了，大家才又振作精神地笑着看。在这一夜里，
The younger ones yawned a lot, and the older ones were all minding their own conversations. Suddenly, a clown in a red shirt was tied to a pillar and was beaten with a riding crop by a man with a gray beard. Only then did everyone cheer up and watch with a smile. On this night,
我以为这实在要算是最好的一折。然而老旦终于出台了。老旦本来是我所最怕的东西，尤其是怕他坐下了唱。这时候看见大家也都很扫兴，才知道他们的意见是和我一致的。
I think this is actually the best discount. But Lao Dan finally came out. Lao Dan was what I feared the most, especially when she would sit down and sing. I think this is actually the best discount. But Lao Dan finally came out. Lao Dan was what I feared the most, especially when she would sit down and sing. At this time, I saw that everyone was also disappointed, and I realized that their opinions were consistent with mine.
那老旦当初还只是踱来踱去的唱，后来竟在中间的一把交椅上坐下了。我很担心，双喜他们却就破口喃喃地骂。我忍耐地等着，许多功夫，只见那老旦将手一抬，我以为就要站起来了。
The old lady was just pacing back and forth singing at first, but later she actually sat down on a chair in the middle. I was worried. Shuangxi and the others just murmured curses. I waited patiently, and after a long time, I saw the old lady raise her hand, and I thought she was about to stand up.
不料她却又慢慢地放下在原地方，仍旧唱。全船里几个人不住地郁气，其余的也打起哈欠来。双喜终于熬不住了，说道：“怕她会唱到天明还不完。”还是我们走的好吧。大家立刻都赞成。
Unexpectedly, he slowly put it down in the same place and continued singing. Several people in the boat couldn't help but gasp, and the rest also yawned. Shuangxi finally couldn't stand it any longer and said, "I'm afraid he won't finish singing until dawn, so it's better for us to leave." Everyone immediately agreed. 和
开船时候一样踊跃，3、4人竟奔船尾， 拔了高，点退几丈，回转船头，架起橹，骂着老旦，又向那松柏林前进了。月还没有落，仿佛看戏也并不很久似的，而一里照妆。
As excited as when the boat was sailing, 3 or 4 people ran to the stern of the boat, pulled out their poles, stepped back a few feet, turned the bow, raised the oar, scolded Lao Dan, and headed towards the pine and cypress trees again. The moon has not yet set, as if it had not been long since I watched the play, and as soon as I left Zhaozhuang.
月光又显得格外的皎洁，回望戏台在灯火光中，却又如初来未到时候一般，又飘渺的像一座仙山楼阁，满被红霞照着了。吹到耳边来的又是横笛，很悠扬，我疑心老旦已经进去了。
The moonlight looked particularly bright again. Looking back at the stage in the light of the lights, it feels as if it had not arrived yet, and it is as misty as a fairy mountain pavilion, covered with red clouds. Another transverse flute blew to my ears, very melodious. I suspected that Lao Dan had already entered.
但也不好意思说再回去看。不多久，松柏林早在船后了，船行也并不慢，但周围的黑暗只是浓，可知已经到了深夜。他们一面议论着戏子，或骂或笑，一面加紧地摇船。
But am embarrassed to say that I'll go back and watch it again. Not long after, the pine trees and cypress trees were already behind the boat, and the boat was not moving slowly, but the surrounding darkness was only thick, indicating that it was already late at night. While they were talking about the actors, scolding or laughing, they were rocking the boat harder.
这一次船头的积水声更其响亮了，那航船就像一条大白鱼背着一群孩子在浪花里窜，连业余的几个老渔夫也停了亭子，看着喝彩起来。黎平桥村还有一里模样，船行却慢了。
This time the sound of the water rushing on the bow was even louder. The boat was like a big white fish carrying a group of children on its back, jumping in the waves. Even the old fishermen who were fishing at night stopped the boat to watch and cheer. There is still about a mile away from Pingxiao village, but the boat is moving slowly.
摇船的都说很疲乏，因为太用力，而且许久没有东西吃。这回想出来的是桂生，说是罗汉豆，其正旺相，柴火又现成，我们可以偷一点来煮吃。大家都赞成，立刻进岸停了船，岸上的田里。
Those who rocked the boat said they were very tired because they worked too hard and had nothing to eat for a long time. What came to mind was Guisheng, saying that Luohan bean, 7, was in full bloom, and firewood was readily available, so we could steal some for cooking. Everyone agreed and immediately parked the boat near the shore, in the fields on the shore.
乌油油的便都是结实的罗汉豆。啊，阿发，这边是你家的，这边是老六一家的，我们偷那边的呢。双喜先跳下去了，在岸上说：“我们也都跳上岸。”阿发一面跳，一面说道：“且慢。”
The oily stools are all solid mangosteen. Fa, this is your family, this is Lao Lu's family, which one should we steal? Shuangxi jumped down first and said on the shore. We also jumped ashore. Fa jumped and said, wait a minute.
让我来看一看吧。他于是往来的摸了一回，直起身来说道：“偷我们的罢，我们的大得多呢。”一声答应，